I'm not sure if Nancy Pelosi actually endorsed him. I take that
There are
back.
21 members of Congress who endorsed him, all 21 of whom obviously, once the news came out, well, I shouldn't say obviously, unendorsed him. By the way, you know, someone who really gets it is Elizabeth Warren is outside the Capitol yesterday, and she's asked by Mano Raju about this thing. He's the CNN Capitol Hill reporter. Here's a little bit of what Senator Warren had to say.
What surprises me is how these guys keep doing this over and over. He's not the first, and he probably won't be the last. That they get into positions of authority and they think they can have whatever they want. And ultimately, it's good to see a little accountability.
Well, I would say, Senator, very little, and I agree with everything else you said here. There's a sense of entitlement that is incredible, and the lack of progress, at least to me, do you disagree with this? The lack of progress is frightening, actually, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think there's been progress in the sense that 30 years ago, if you complained about this, there was no one to complain to, and your bosses would say things like, hey, sweetheart, you know, you wanted to work here with the big boys. This is the way it goes. Take it or leave it. I mean, I think that's the way it used to be. Certainly when I was young, there was no one to complain to. Nobody really cared. So I think there's been progress in that sense, which is pretty pathetic.
But it's so, I mean, this one, go to Gonzalez for a minute. First of all, there's a specific provision in the ethics rules. I can't believe they need one. It says you can't have a romantic, in quotes, relationship with a staff person, which he did. That's one. Two, the consequence of this was not just that a woman's life was made worse. She died by suicide. She sets herself on fire, and the only time he's forced to resign is when they found a Democrat that the Democrats are going to force to resign. I mean, it's so modest.
I guess it's so modest, but I think where I disagree with you, I think that there has been, sexual harassment and abuse of women for decades and decades and decades and decades. I mean, look at the Harvey Weinstein situation, where you had women who arguably were more powerful. They were actresses. They were women that had means to fight this guy. This went on for years. Everybody knew about Harvey Weinstein.
Margaret,
what?
Donald Trump's president.
Well, again, Donald Trump.
Yeah,
you just said that. Donald Trump is the president. What is it? We're up to 22 women or 23 women. He's been liable for sexual assault.
He's been found liable, right, by a jury. By
a jury, yeah. And a second jury found that he defamed E. Jean Carroll, the woman who said that she sexually was assaulted by him in a dressing room at Bergdorf Goodman.
And a jury, as you say, found that that was true. That I believe sexual abuse. Jamie, can you find so we don't get sued like George Stephanopoulos? I think the jury in that case, he called it rape, and it technically wasn't rape, but I think they did find 7301-897. Let me just get this out. Do you feel the forced resignations of Gonzalez, the Republican, Swalwell, the Democrat, are major moments of accountability in this unending thing of powerful men preying on women?
Here's Hegseth. A staff member of the California Federation of Republican Women accused him of sexually assaulting her after he spoke at a conference.
You just said Hegseth.
Hegseth? Yes.
Oh.
After about 5 days, an emergency nurse contacted law enforcement after treating a woman who said she may have been drugged and raped by him, according to a 22-page batch of police documents. He settled. He paid an undisclosed amount to this woman as part of a non-disclosure agreement after she threatened litigation. And then you had his wives who talked about her hiding in the closet. But like I said, I disagree with you. Until Anita Hill came along in 1992, this stuff went on.
Well, that's true.
And nobody did a thing about it.
Okay,
and obviously we know that there's a thing in general about sexual assault because, as we all know, we had Mitchell Garabedian on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about the Catholic Church, where it went on for decades and decades and decades, and those were rapes of children in some cases.
You know what I forgot, by the way? It was sexual abuse at the jury in the E. Jean Carroll case. The 9 jurors deliberated for 3 hours, and it was unanimous. 3 hours is all it took to find Trump liable for sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll.
And by the way, I just mentioned Anita Hill, and I actually was there when she testified in Congress. It was a packed place.
Were you in the room?
I was in the room. I was in the back of the room. I was in the back, sitting down. I had no chairs. But anyway, sitting on the floor. But anyway, I was there. And, of course, it didn't really matter because Clarence Thomas was people put him on the Supreme Court anyway. Joe Biden
disgraced himself.
Should have allowed other women to testify against
Kennedy
Clarence Thomas,
couldn't speak
but he
because
didn't.
Palm
He was
Springs
silenced.
had just happened.
Yeah, he'd been down there in his underpants in the apartment with his nephew, persuading him to go out for late night cocktails, I think at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
The number is 877-301-8970. What do you make of these two resignations? Do you consider it to be progress? Do you consider it to be serious level of accountability that should be celebrated? I think, by the way, obviously, I think it's great they're gone. But, the Gonzalez thing went on for months and months and months. The fall from grace for Swalwell. What did happen? Was it Friday that this came out? It's like less than a week, isn't it?
I don't know. It's just a few days
that he
ago.
goes from being a front runner for being governor of California. I mean, you'd argue if you're governor of California, you got a pretty good shot of being a presidential candidate in 4 years, to the mess that he finds himself in. But by the way, having said that, he lost his job, lost his next potential job. As of the moment, while the Manhattan DA, from what we read, is investigating, the guy's not being criminally prosecuted, and the charges of rape are, I think, pretty credible. So again, he hasn't lost his freedom yet.
A texter has reminded us about an alleged crime family. We have the head of the Department of Labor, Lori Chavez.
Oh, I forgot about that. The groper.
She's been accused of having an affair with a security guard and drinking on the job as Secretary of Labor, and her husband has been banned from coming into the
groping
building.
the staff.
For groping on camera. I guess the cameras they have. So that's kind of an alleged crime family. John from Westford says, let's not forget Bill Clinton, the biggest predator of them all. But I remind John and everybody else of this. When he was elected, we knew about his long-term affair with Jennifer Flowers. She was a lounge singer or whatever. They had an affair. We didn't know about him sexually assaulting anybody, and that is a big, huge difference. We knew about multiple women accusing Donald Trump of sexual assault, and we elected him not once but twice. Nonetheless.
Let me just add one thing. You always get uncomfortable when I mention this, but I'm going to say it. I was around here. I had moved here already during the Clinton years, and virtually the only columnist in Boston who would regularly go after Clinton and not make apologies for his behavior was Marjorie Egan at the Boston Herald. I think that it was even before I knew you.
Oh, my goodness. I got some applause from the audience. That's right.
It was really terrific.
Well, that's because, like I said, when I was a young reporter, Jim, this kind of stuff was like, just getting a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Tell the story, if you will, and then we'll get to some calls at 877-301-8970. I think was it the Herald, some job you're applying for, and the guy is sitting behind the desk, and tell about the painting that's behind him.
Yeah, and this was not that long ago. This was like the mid-1980s. I'm interviewing for this job at the Herald, as a matter of fact.
That's, by the way, it was 40 years ago.
It was 40 years ago. Okay, I'm old. But I do remember sitting in this guy's office and getting interviewed for this job, and every time he moves his head, the naked breast of this woman is like a 6 by 8 foot naked woman on the wall of his office, and it was really difficult to look at him, with his nipples staring me in the face. But, that's the way it was. I mean, that's, just the start of it. I mean, it was nonstop. So that's why I say we have made progress. At least
I'm not saying there's no
and women
progress.
are much more believed. And what's really depressing is that if you had a legitimate rape case, it wasn't that long ago that you were asked on the witness stand, what were you wearing when the incident happened? So we've made progress. 877-301-8970 is the number. Are we going to this person?
No, there's a phone issue. They're getting,
keep
calling.
Issue.
We're getting there.
Okay, well, let me look at some texts then in the meantime.
Can I also, another little piece of history beyond your personal history? Remember was it Linda Fairstein on the show, who's a former assistant DA in New York City? She wrote a book a bunch of years ago as well. She was responsible for the change in New York law. Do you want to describe what New York State law was not that long ago, like 25 plus years ago?
This is about the husband being able to
rape. You needed a corroboration.
Oh, you need a corroborating witness.
If a woman had no corroboration, if she accused, this is true. This is in the 90s, I believe. If you accused a man of rape and had no corroborating evidence over and above your testimony, the DA could not even bring a charge, even if they believed that your testimony was credible. Let's finally take some calls. Robin Taunton, you're first. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Jim.
Hi.
Hey, Jim, I just wanted to make a comment regarding the comments that Marjorie made about Clarence Thomas.
Well, why aren't you making them to Marjorie since she made them? But go ahead.
Okay. Marjorie, I can't congratulate you enough for bringing that up. I remember watching that on TV, and the hideous things that Clarence Thomas said to Anita Hill. And I used to say to my parents and friends, there is no way that a woman of her stature would go before a Senate, a congressional committee, and make this stuff up.
Yeah.
It was so horrible. And Clarence Thomas walked away scot-free, which I feel was a horrible, horrible, egregious thing that got swept under the carpet.
Rob, Rob just reminded me, we shouldn't assume that young listeners know exactly what her testimony. You want to give a quick summary of what Anita Hill
she
said?
was kind of dragged into
Thank
this.
you,
She
Rob.
didn't really want to do it, but she was kind of dragged into this. And I remember she had a bright green suit on. Her parents.
Remember her lawyer sitting next to her, the brilliant Charles Ogletree?
That's right. Oh,
One of
my
the
gosh, that's right.
Great souls
And
I've ever met in my
her
life.
elderly parents came in, and she is such a classy woman. She still is around in this neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, such a classy woman. She talked about how he would talk about, his endowment and the dirty movies he liked to go get from the store, and he
Wasn't it Long Dong Silver?
Long Dong Silver, and he talked about pubic hairs on Coke cans, and asked her questions about sex and stuff like that. But people said that then why didn't she do something? Because there was no one really to do. That was the point. People didn't care if these things were going on. And when she asked him for help to get another job, she was criticized for that. But you know why she did? Because there were so few African Americans in positions that could help her. I think a lot of women got help from people they were also sexually harassed by, because there were so few women, and half of them were sexually harassed. So
let me just say, by the way, to qualify what I've said before, she totally changed the world. I'm just saying.
She did.
I think you'd agree that the change has not been as dramatic nor as fast or nor as complete as it needs to be. Diana, you're in Boylston. You're on BPR with Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. Hi.
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 Okay. My point is they're finding out how Cesar Chavez assaulted women and starting to take it. But interesting, how many places in Massachusetts are named after Ted Kennedy?
You're talking about...
They don't seem to be.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, nobody seems to be worried about taking down the name of a school or a library who's named after Ted Kennedy.
You're talking about the death of Mary Jo Kopechne, obviously, right? Is that what you're talking about, Diana?
Yes, that and other charges against him, but especially the Mary Jo Kopechne. I mean...
Well, there are a lot of people who share your point of view, and I have to say, this won't make you happy. While I totally find the Kopechne thing abhorrent, I've also said repeatedly on the air, I think he was the greatest United States Senator in American history, which does not undo his sins, but I'm part of your problem, Diana, I guess.
But Diana, I think Diana, thank you for the call. I think you also make the point that back when this happened in the late 1960s or 70s, I'm sure there were a lot of people that blamed Mary Jo Kopechne. I mean, that's the way it was then. Not to say that the Kennedy Library...
That she shouldn't have been out with him?
Yeah, it was. What was she? Would she get in the car with him? What was she doing getting in the car with him? What did she think was going to happen? I mean, I think that was there was a whole different attitude. That was the 1960s. I mean, that is a long time ago.
But the point that Diana makes, I mean, the Chavez thing was also a long time ago, at least started a long time ago. Yeah. And by the way, speaking of the Chavez thing, I'm glad that she brought that up. Part of what I read last night when I read the same thing you did, not only insiders, but anybody who wanted to pay attention knew there were serious allegations against Swalwell for years. Many people think the reason it reached a crescendo was not just the courage of these women. I think it's 4 women coming forward, one with her identity public, the other would not, but because of the backdrop of the Chavez thing. It was so intense.
But isn't it incredible when you think about it that this was kept, again, a secret for all these decades?
Yeah,
we had Dolores Huerta, the great labor leader that was with him on the radio with us. She's in her 90s now. Apparently, he was the father of two
of her kids.
Of her children. Did she mention any of this when she was on the radio with us?
Did you hear what she said when she wanted damage? Beyond a belief issue, which is really heartbreaking, equally heartbreaking, as she said, because of her commitment to her work, she thought it would hurt the movement.
Yeah.
I mean, just...
And in the case of Chavez, a lot of these women were 12 and 13-year-old girls.
I know. Leanne,
we haven't mentioned the Epstein files, speaking of 13-year-old girls. I mean, that's the other thing, too. Swalwell is resigning, but we still do not know of the men involved.
Well, the good news is Trump was totally exonerated. I know that he said it like 312 times.
Well, right before the Iran war, we were hearing something about the 13-year-old girl who'd accused the president, but we haven't heard much about that lately. Leanne in the car.
Hi, Leanne.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
My point is this is a major cultural shift, right? From the point of things going on every day, like Marjorie referenced. And I do think we need to celebrate every time someone is called to task. We need to mentor young women to help them be brave enough to speak up. We need to mentor young men to let them know, to show them examples that men will be held accountable when this happens. And it happens in increments, I think. Every time we do better, we take a little bit of a step forward. This is a major change in our culture on the planet. It's not just our country.
Yeah, but Leanne, I don't mean to be the voice of constant negativity here. Is a sexual abuser who is credibly accused of worse by some of the 24 people who've had the courage to be public is the most powerful person in the world and was elected to the presidency in the most important democracy in the world. How can we really celebrate anything when this is who, I mean, that old line, this is who we are. The American people decided it's okay that he's a felon. It's okay he's a serial abuser of women. It's okay he's a liar. I can do endlessly. I mean, with that backdrop, doesn't it temper the progress that you and Marjorie are talking about?
Well, for some reason, Jim, he is this weird anomaly in our history. He gets away with everything. And that just makes me sick every day, and I can't sleep at night. But the only way I get through that is to turn and look at the rest of our culture, that we are making progress.
You're a thoughtful person. We got it. Leanne, thank you very much. And as you said, we should, before we end this, Hegseth, not just accused by women, accused by his mother. 2 weeks ago, reread, "You are that man," as she said after describing an abusive human being.
It's really the bottom of the barrel when your own mother takes pen to paper and starts saying what a jerk you are.
And
she thinks you're despicable.
Again, it's not just labor secretary. I mean, she have an affair. It's her business and her husband's. The husband's coming to the labor department and groping employees. I mean... It's
a crime family. It's a crime family.
It is a crime family.
We got the labor secretary and her husband crime family. And not only that, she was drinking in the office. So maybe she had a few too many cocktails. That was when she got involved with the security guard. We're not sure what exactly happened there. But in any case, she's still there, isn't she? She's still there. I think she is.
Who? Oh, she is. That's the moment.
She's still
By the way, Zoe just tells us the woman studying her math for a master's at Harvard just did an op-ed in the Globe calling on the school to rename the Wexner building.
Oh, yeah.
She's a sexual assault survivor herself. I missed that.
Okay, we thank you very much for your calls and your texts. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk with CNN's John King. He's going to zoom in. We'll talk to him about the latest on the war in Iran, on the ceasefire, and we're going to talk as well about his foray into farm country in North Carolina. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Bob Odenkirk. He built a career playing men with more going on beneath the surface than they first let on. In the new film Normal, he stars in a story that pairs deadpan humor with action and stunt work and turns the idea of the average man into something considerably stronger. Odenkirk joins us with John Wick creator Derek Kolstad to talk about their new film and why Normal is anything but. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling, providing custom kitchens, bathrooms, and accessory dwelling units. Their design team works to create living-in-place solutions tailored to the needs of each home and family. More information at gmroth.com. And Framingham State University, where the strength of a Commonwealth begins with access to opportunity. At FSU, students examine evidence and serve the public good. Framingham State University. Live to the truth. Learn more at framingham.edu.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Shannon O'Brien, the Cannabis Control Commission chair, at least for the time being, will join us in person and on April 28th. It's a 2 for Tuesday at the BPL. First hour, Governor Healy joins us for an hour to take your questions. In the second hour, Mayor Wu joins us for an hour to take your questions. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map, which took CNN's part-time farmer to North Carolina last week to ask whether Democrats can win back rural voters. We'll talk about that too. Hello, John.
We all need a plan B, Jim. Nothing wrong with planting a few potatoes, you know?
Yeah, you look pretty good out there. You look like a natural with that hoe. It was very impressive.
You know, I actually like manual labor, so it was a good thing to do.
It was great.
So, John, there's potential for the second round of talks with Iran with this blockade going on. What do you hear?
They're talking about trying to talk again, and certainly Pakistan, which brokered the first talks, and other interested parties in the region are trying to get everybody back to the table. And sometimes you talk to people in the Trump administration who say there actually was significant progress with the big, giant, almost intractable hang-up that Iran wants at some point to be able to enrich uranium. But so there are those conversations back and forth. And I think part of this is a game of economic chicken. It sounds like I'm making light of a very serious situation. But the United States is now essentially blockading the Strait of Hormuz. I was just looking at some reporting that a number of ships have turned away instead of trying to pass through. And it's almost a waiting game of, if the Trump administration shows its resolve and shows it's prepared to try to isolate Iran even more so economically, does that entice the Iranians to come back to the table? Is it the president who's looking for an off-ramp? Because the longer this crisis goes on, the more difficult the domestic political environment gets. So depending on who you talk to, you get a different spin on who's trying to get back to the table. But there are conversations about trying to do that.
At the same time, I believe today is the first day of the first in 4-decade face-to-face meeting between leaders of Lebanon and leaders of Israel. And we had yesterday just this really impressive guy who's the top UN official in Lebanon. He zoomed in from Beirut, but just to talk about the humanitarian crisis there, 1 million plus people displaced. 40% of them, he says, are children, which is just unthinkable. I don't understand how Lebanon and Israel cut a deal, even if they wanted to, when Hezbollah is not part of, and I'm not advocating for it, I just don't, how does that not be part of the conversation? How's that resolved without them?
This has been part of the intractable here, to use that word again, for decades. I mean, when I was covering the White House, the idea was, you had the old man Assad, Bashar al-Assad, still in Syria, supporting terror groups in Lebanon. And you had the Iranians supporting terror groups in Lebanon. That was most likely one and the same, just routing through Syria as well. And so who are you talking to? And if you're talking to the quote-unquote government of Lebanon, do they actually have the power to enforce anything they tell you? What kind of security guarantees would you have to get them? There's been various levels of engagement from Lebanon with the West, and including Israel, and then it retreats and pulls back. But you can't stop it. It is the government, so you have to try. And the question, the Israelis are hoping that a weakened Iran allows the Lebanese government to come to the table with some sort of guarantees. But yes, you raise a key question. If Hezbollah still exists in any form, is that deal worth the paper it's printed on?
Before we leave these topics of negotiations and possible negotiations, is there any doubt, and you broached this in passing, is there any doubt in the community in which, the news community in which you work there, that Trump does want an off-ramp? I mean, I know he says things, we won regardless, doesn't matter, everything, we won everything we're looking for, and he, cites sinking the Navy and whatever he cites every single time he's asked. But it's pretty clear to an observer a few hundred miles away that whatever way he can get out of this without total embarrassment, he intends to do. Is that unfair?
I don't know if I would word it exactly like that, but there's absolutely no question that a significant portion of the president's base thinks this is not what they voted for. And even if you were going to have something limited in Iran, okay, Mr. President, we'll give you that leash because we support you, but limited. Emphasis on limited, all caps, boldface. And so where are we now? This is not limited. This is starting to drag out. So even the America First part of the Trump base is a little dispirited. Plus, Jim, the price of gas is down a little bit in the last couple of days. I think it's down about a nickel from where it's high. But gas prices are going to stay high, and even the president concedes this for months. If this all were to go away like that, and it's not going to go away like that, the price of gas is going to stay. The volatility in the economy is going to stay. Another inflation report today showing inflation up again. This is a disaster for the president and his party in the midterm elections. And I've been talking for a very long time about the almost certainty that Democrats take back the House. There are a lot of Republicans who now think it's gone from impossible to improbable to possible that the Democrats take the Senate as well. And if that's happening, that means the Democrats are going to pick up some governor seats that they probably wouldn't win in a normal year. It means they're going to replenish their bench in some state legislatures. So, we always focus in a midterm election year on the House and the Senate, important, especially if you're a guy like me who works in Washington. But if you get even a medium wave either way, and this would be a blue wave, there tends to be some stuff down ballot too that helps a party, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road because you build your bench. And so Republicans are worried that what they thought would be a moderately bad midterm year could end up turning into a disaster.
Since you mentioned the midterms, we're going to get to this later. We mentioned John's foray into North Carolina. He talks to a farmer there, Ed Weinbarger, I believe is how he pronounces his name, struggling with rising costs. Here's what the farmer had to say.
This right here, getting it under your fingernails, Democrats have a hard time with this. They can't show a connection to the working class. Everything's expensive. Inflation hasn't stopped. It's continuing. For supplies and now for fuel. Now we're at war. Transportation costs, fuel, machinery, equipment, labor, amendments, fertilizers, all more expensive.
So what was your takeaway from your trip there, John?
That Roy Cooper, the former Democratic governor, has a very good shot of winning that seat, the Senate seat, which is one of the 3 or 4 the Democrats would need to take back the Senate. It's not enough, but the fact that you have a competitive Democrat statewide, there are 1 or 2 House seats there that are a bit of a steeper climb for the Democrats. The reason I wanted to do that piece was we talk a lot about the opportunities for Democrats. Democrats can have a very good midterm year because of the president's unpopularity. To turn it from a good year into a great year, the Democrats do have to deal with some of their own problems. And one of the most persistent Democratic problems has been what I document in that piece, essentially a 50-year decline in rural America from Jimmy Carter back in 1976, fast forward 50 years to today. And if you look at the presidential race, if you look at congressional races, yes, the Democrats have picked up a lot of voters in the suburbs. Yes, the Democrats maintain their urban base. But if you want to win statewide in a place like North Carolina, a place like Iowa, a place like Ohio, the Democrats need to at least modestly rebuild in rural America. And the question is, can they do that? When Ed said that underneath their fingers, he reached down and scooped up some dirt. Yeah. His point is that the Democrats have become sort of an elitist party of the suburbs, and they don't come visit farms. They don't come visit factories. They don't hang out with plumbers and electricians and see what it's like.
So is part of that the Democrats don't go to these places?
He says that, he said he's going to vote for Governor Cooper. He hopes Governor Cooper wins. I said, has Governor Cooper ever been here? He said no. Now, Ed lives in a little town called Velas. It's about 20 minutes outside of Boone. Boone has a college, right? Appalachian State University there. So the Democrats show up there because there are a few more people there. I mean, look, the main population centers, are Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham. So people don't come. I went from Vilas, where I was with Ed, into Marshall and Hot Springs, which are back where I had been before, the communities most devastated by Hurricane Helene. These are tiny rural towns where, again, Michael Dukakis did well back in the 80s in these places, and the Democrats lose now. So, some of that's Trump, but the Democrats were already receding in rural America, and then Trump is now synonymous with rural America. But there's some evidence. You get into these, you talk to these farmers, and number one, first the tariffs and the uncertainties of global trade. Now, not only do you have to drive the pickup 25 miles to go to the hardware store or the grocery store, all the equipment on your farm runs on diesel, which is even more expensive than unleaded if you're putting unleaded in the truck. And so there's an opportunity there because people are mad at the status quo. The question is, do Democrats come in and start to look these people in the eye and ask them what it's like and do what I did and pull that lug of potatoes up the hill and put them in the soil? and spend some time with them and understand them. I use this word all the time. It's simple respect. You have to show up and respect people for what they do.
But do Republican candidates go to those places? I mean, I think the reason, logically, you wouldn't go to teeny tiny towns because there's only a teeny tiny number of voters, whereas you go to a bigger city, get more people. But are Republicans making those inroads and Democrats aren't? Or is nobody making the inroads?
In some places, yes, that varies. You make a great point. It varies from state to state. I say this all the time. This is not a partisan statement. This is about both of them, especially when they come to Washington. Too many of them forget where they come from, and they don't go home. They don't go home. You got at least 2 years. If you're a senator, you got 6 years before your next election. If you're a House member, you got 2 years. You can go home on the weekend and wander around at these places. They're amazing little towns. They're so much fun to go to. You just to see. For me, the greatest gift of my life is to have this job. I get paid to learn, and I get paid to see places and understand places that are so different from King Street in Dorchester, Massachusetts. That's a gift. I don't know why the politicians would want to stay in Washington and hang out at the lobbies and hang out with the fundraisers. I'd rather hang out with Ed on the farm.
Well, the difference is they're scared of their constituents. You're not, John. We're talking to John King from CNN. So yesterday, your colleague, Anderson Cooper, opened a show, I thought brilliantly. He shows a photograph of Jesus attending to someone, a photograph, a meme, as he describes it, as Trump Jesus, which we all saw yesterday, and then a photograph of a doctor. And he says to the audience, he says, I have doctors. That meme, that doesn't look like a doctor. Trump is now saying, obviously, we've all heard this. Oh, no, only fake news thought it was anything other than me portrayed as a doctor. Obviously, he's portraying himself as a Jesus who is healing. The surprising part of this is not that he would do that, but that so many people in his base were openly critical of him for this. He pulls it down. Does that last? It seems to me, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, that kind of thing cuts so close to the bone for so many hardcore MAGA people that that may have longer staying power than his other sins. Is that your perception?
I think you raised an interesting point, and you're right that there was more public criticism of the president than you have on so many other issues when this one happened. So I was mentioning states where Democrats do better in rural areas. Warren Davidson is a congressman from just north of Cincinnati, suburbs and up into the rural areas. Yeah, he said this was blasphemous and the president had to take it down. He's a Republican. So why does that happen so quickly? The ones who do pay attention to what's happening back home, go to church on Sunday, saw the horrified reaction. I was in touch yesterday with a bunch of evangelical pastors I know, one in North Carolina, one in Iowa, one in Ohio, who are saying, like, different people in their congregation say different things, but they all kind of winced at it and said it's just simply not true. And to your point about the president says, well, he was just trying to be a doctor, his own vice president gave a different story. So the president was just joking. He likes to be provocative. And so I would say this, what is the shelf life, right? So many Trump controversies last a couple hours, he pulls back and they go away. In the midterm election you were just talking about, Jim, just imagine, the Democrats are all motivated. Again, the Democrats have a lot of their own problems still to solve, but they're motivated by this anti-Trump right now, and they're turning out. And we've seen that in 2025 and 2026 in every election so far. Let's say there's 3 guys in your town who are mad about the Epstein files, 3 farmers in your town who are mad about tariffs, a couple other people who are mad because the president's now mocking Jesus or pretending he's Jesus. That's all it takes. In a very close election, if you're in a 50-50 election and your turnout is depressed a little bit and the other guys are coming out of the woodwork, bang. That's the math that makes close elections happen.
One of the things I found really interesting on your station last night is they did a chronology of Trump posting this Jesus Trump thing, then a minute later posting Trump Tower on the moon. And then what I didn't know till last night, I missed it, and we didn't mention on yesterday's show because I guess we both missed it. He was still posting till 4:10 a.m. The next, what's the conventional wisdom? I assume he doesn't have a staff person with him at 4:10 in the morning. I hope he doesn't have a staff person with him at 4:10 in the morning. So is he just sitting in the presidential bedroom or residence, like just posting at 4 a.m. or what's?
He keeps an irregular schedule to be kind. I mean, if you go back to the first term, remember, he used to sometimes tweet overnight, but often tweet at like 5 in the morning. That was when he would drive the morning news cycle by tweeting at 5 in the morning. Now it's Truth Social for him. It's not Twitter or X anymore. But there's no question that the president And what he's doing, Jim, a lot of these times is he's consuming on the internet, looking at things and often reposting things that are the most dangerous, the things that get him in the most trouble, reposting conspiracy theories and things like that. But he's also watching a lot of television. When he complains about things on CNN, often we try to retrace what is he complaining about. And they were on CNN International at like 3 a.m.
That's great. That's really...
one of our texters has a good question, John. He says, raping, warring, stealing, but minor AI blasphemy is what gets upset, which is a pretty interesting way to put it.
Well, it's not so minor for people who are seriously religious types.
Yeah, but if you're seriously religious, you're not in on the sexual assault and the warring and the stealing either. Or the screwing of the poor, which is another big thing.
Okay, so John, last week we cheated you out of an opportunity to talk about your favorite baseball team. So last night, their star pitcher had the single worst outing of his professional career. What do you want to say about that?
My favorite baseball team at the moment is my son's. That's the Bullis Bulldogs.
What are they called?
The Bullis Bulldogs.
Okay, the Bullis
Bulldogs.
He's a freshman in high school, and he's got a game at 4:30 this afternoon. And so that's my favorite team at the moment. Look, let's focus on the Celtics and the Bruins for now, and you circle back with me on that Red Sox team in a month or so, and hopefully the ship has been righted. Last night I literally walked in and looked at my app. I was going to turn the game on. It was 10-0, and I can't repeat what I said. I looked down because I knew the game had just started. I was like, I might probably miss the first inning. I looked down, and I can't. It's just family friendly. The nuns in Dorchester might still be listening. I can't say what came out of my lips.
What positions your kid play?
He plays a little bit of everything. He's catching today, which he loves to do. So he knows he's starting at catching today. He pitched a fantastic game last week. Had 3 hits and 5 RBIs. It was
my God.
Good for him.
It was great, Dad. That's my real job. I'm a baseball shuttle driver who does a little bit new stuff on the side.
Hey, John, congratulations for the kids.
John
Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to see you. Thanks a lot.
We've been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project all over the map. And it's really fun to watch him sitting down in these little cafes and having pancakes and stuff like that all over the country.
He literally, people didn't see his piece. He's like planting potatoes on this farm in North Carolina. It was great.
Okay, coming up after this quick break, we're going to check in with Boston University CTE Center, where Michael Alosco is researching brain health and concussions and the link between concussions and possibly dementia. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Every morning, you trust your alarm to wake you up. A cup of coffee to get things going. And a GPS to get you there on time.
Your route may be affected by...
For the news you need, trust GBH News.
Welcome to GBH's Morning Edition. Looking at local headlines this morning.
Get ready with us. GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hers. Weekdays from 6 to 10 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine, AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And Schneider Electric, bringing sustainability advisory services to the Boston Athletic Association and committed to helping advance energy tech worldwide. Learn more about the Schneider Electric and BAA partnership at se.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow. Shannon O'Brien, who is currently the chair of the Cannabis Control Commission, will join us in person. Then on April 28th, which is a Tuesday at the library, first hour is Maura Healy with us for an hour to take your questions. Second hour, Michelle Wu for an hour to take your questions. That's Tuesday, 28th of the month. CTE, a brain disease caused by repetitive hits to the head, has been found in the majority of NFL players after they die. Our next guest, Michael Alosco of Boston University's CTE Center, is working to obtain a path to diagnosis during life, as well as making the connection between CTE and dementia. Alosco is a licensed clinical neuropsychologist and associate professor of neurology, BU School of Medicine, the co-director of research at the school CTE Center. And we should just say, to put it in context, you work with Ann McKee, who is just unbelievable. They have a relationship with what used to be called the Concussion Legacy Foundation, now the Concussion and CTE Foundation, whose leaders have been with us many times, Dr. Robert Cantu and Chris Nowinski, who've done spectacular work, as have you. Michael, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very, very much for coming in, Michael. So just start by explaining to people who may not know, what is CTE?
Yeah, well, first, I'm really excited to be here to highlight this topic. And CTE, progressive brain disease, as mentioned, are related to head trauma, particularly repeated head trauma. And when you think of CTE, think of Alzheimer's disease. It's different in how it presents in the brain, but it's a progressive brain disease in the same way.
And when you say repeated trauma, I think a lot of people think you have to be playing linebacker for the Patriots to have this problem. It has been seen damage much younger.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of misconceptions here. So one is, if you bump your head, have a concussion, 2 concussions, that's not going to trigger CTE, right? We know most people recover from that. But what we are talking about is just that thousands of hits to the head over the course of someone's lifetime. We see it a lot in tackle football, but to your point, we see it in other settings too. Physical violence, think of military service. All of these are other settings where you have a lifetime course of just hitting your head over and over again.
I want to be clear that I'm right. As of the moment, the only ability to diagnose CTE is after someone has died and you have a brain, as obviously you and the Concussion CTE Foundation have done many times, right?
Yeah, right now, exactly, you are right. We have to have the brain to look at under a microscope to confirm it, and that's what we're trying to solve.
So tell us about these recent findings vis-a-vis dementia, and then we'll talk in a minute about what the consequence of those findings are. What'd you learn?
Yeah, so we had a recent study not too long ago, maybe last month, where we wanted to better understand how does CTE, the disease in the brain, affect someone's life, their functioning, right? And to us who study Alzheimer's disease, it's been kind of obvious. So to us, some would say, why do you need this study? But we do. We need the data. We need the evidence. And it showed that those with CTE had almost fourfold increased odds for having dementia, right? So problems with memory that interferes with their ability to drive, to function in their daily life. And it was one of the largest studies of our kind, and really kind of drove home the link between CTE and dementia.
And why does it matter that, my understanding is that until this research you did, that there'd been often a misdiagnosis where Alzheimer's was seen as the cause of the CT, as the cause of the dementia rather than CTE. Why does that matter in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, it's a real problem. So we have a clinic at Boston Medical Center where we see people all across the country really concerned for CTE. And a lot of them are older, come in, they look just like Alzheimer's disease. And fortunately, we have really good tests for Alzheimer's disease to rule out. But outside of specialty centers like ourselves, they don't have those tests available. And so we found in that study that 40% of them were actually, who had CTE at death, were told during life that they had Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
So that was another major finding too.
Can I go back to the beginning just for a second? One of the first things you broached, it's really important because I fear that people are saying, well, my kid's not going to end up being an NFL player. Some of the great research your colleagues have done suggests that while 1 or 2 hits are not going to change your life, that even young kids who never go on to anything beyond, for example, high school, if they get repetitive hits to the head, this can reappear far later in their life, right?
Yeah, I think we need a lot more research on that front. I think everyone can agree that hitting your head over and over again is not good at any age, particularly at a young age. How that manifests later in life is unclear, especially in terms of CTE. We do see changes. For example, there's studies out there where they follow, for example, a high school football team over one season, and they show changes in the brain. And then some studies show, you get recovery after a break of rest. So that's something we need to figure out, though. What is the risk? If you just play youth football, or high school football, what's your risk for later life consequences? That's something we're still looking into.
So the research that you did, the reason it should be of significance to average people is I've read you quoted as saying this may be the path for us to ultimately be able to diagnose CTE while someone is living. Why? What is it about what you found that would allow you, hopefully, to get to that point?
Yeah, so there's two things when you make a diagnosis of conditions like Alzheimer's disease or CTE. One is, how does that disease look? What are the symptoms of it, right? And that's exactly what this study showed, is that with this disease, it can manifest with memory problems. It can manifest with trouble with functioning. The next part to that diagnosis, which we haven't talked about yet, is getting an actual marker that tells you something about what's going on inside the brain. You combine those and you get your diagnosis.
How close are you to that?
So I would say we're close to being able to make confident diagnoses of CTE in certain situations. I would say we're farther away from having that marker, right? That's going to get us really accurate, but that's going to take a lot more funds, a lot more resources to discover that. But there's a constellation of risk factors, symptoms, and other things we can do where we can be pretty confident in certain situations.
You know, I wanted to get back to one thing you said at the beginning, too, about people in the military. One of our texters is asking if this is about being exposed to constant explosions, or if this is like from jumping out of airplanes in the military. You don't think there's much hand-to-hand combat in the military anymore. So what in the military could be causing these problems?
Yeah, I think the military is challenging to study because there's so many different types of sources of these head traumas. You can have blasts. There was that recent New York Times article, right, about the Navy SEAL ships, right, where there's a lot of up and down, and what that might result in, we don't know yet. So there's a lot of these different types of exposures that we need to understand in the military that might have effects on the brain.
Yeah, we have a lot of text questions for you.
Do.
Here's one. CTE, and I think you passed over this, but I think this is where you're going. CTE, what about domestic violence? Can they comment on this? The number one cause of death for domestic violence victims is head trauma. I've never heard anyone talk about CTE and domestic violence, Michael.
Yeah, that's because there's not a lot of research out there. There's some that have created a link, but it's very scarce. And that's something actually our center at BU is trying to address. We're recruiting more females and more types of sources, military people with this history of violence, so we can understand how those sources result in potential problems.
You only just realized when I was talking about people who are not NFL players, you mentioned this morning the guy that went to NFL headquarters.
In New York City.
Yeah.
Shane Tamura. He said he played football. Well, he said this in a note because he took his own life. But that he played football from age 6 through high school. But he blamed CTE for why he went into that skyscraper in Manhattan, the office
He mentioned
tower.
Chris Nowinski in that
Yes,
note,
he did.
by the way.
And he blamed football, and he took his own life, and he shot himself in the chest so his brain would be intact for people to examine. Yeah. And they did find CTE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really complex issue, and sadly those cases are so tragic. And I think people can be quick to jump to that link of CTE, suicide, and homicidal behaviors, but I think we need to be careful, right? When there's a lot of different pathways that can get to that point, and they all kind of converge at one time to result in these really tragic outcomes. And to blame any one thing, it could be a quick jump to a conclusion.
We're talking to Michael Alosco of BU's CTE Center.
So I'm wondering if someone had multiple concussions or a lot of head trauma, and they are feeling like they're having memory issues or they're just feeling not right, do they go to their doctor and tell them, or what do you do? Yeah,
so there's a couple of answers there. One is if you're actively playing and have head trauma, go to your primary care doctor. There's specialists out there who deal with concussion. You mentioned Dr. Cantu in the beginning. He's one of the world's expert on dealing with a concussion. If you're someone older who's had that history and starting to experience these symptoms of memory loss, your best bet is to go to your doctor and then advocate for a neurologist. There's unfortunately not a lot of access to people who specialize in CTE like us. We have this new study called the Diagnose CTE Research Project now, where we actually have 5 sites across the country, San Francisco, Arizona, Texas, Florida, and here in Boston, where it's a group of people who specialize in this topic. And our goal, our bigger picture is how can we increase access to care, education, resources for all these people potentially concerned with CTE.
Well, so Michael, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I do know now in Massachusetts, at least, that when you begin to play sports in high school, you're supposed to take a baseline test. Yeah. And then if you get a concussion, you can't go back to the sport until you achieve the baseline you achieved before the concussion. That seems like a big deal to me. Yeah,
the more we can do to identify concussion and care and manage concussion, the better off people are going to be. And I think we've made a lot of strides in concussion at amateur levels, at professional levels. We've done a lot. People have done a lot, and we do really well there. But it still doesn't address our issue of CTE, right, where we have hits over and over again, regardless of concussion, right? I'm talking about hits to the head that maybe don't result in symptoms, but still result in some type of injury. Think about a knee, wear and tear in the knee over the course of your life. Eventually that knee is gonna have problems later in life. It's no different, it's just the brain.
So let's assume you get to the point where there can be a regular, well, hopefully not that regular, but in appropriate cases, a diagnosis of CTE while living. What does that get you? I mean, there's not a preventive thing, unless I missed it. Is it to prepare for what your future might be? What value would that have for an individual or for a family?
So just to back up, preventative, if you avoid hitting your head a bunch, it can be prevented, right?
No, that, of course I understand that, yeah.
Right, so, but to your point, if you can diagnose or detect CTE and someone's still alive, then you can intervene, right, and intervene early. And also start to develop treatment trials, right? Right now, we can't start to test out treatments on people because we don't know who has it. I mean, we can take our best guess, but the more
so there could be treatments essentially in the
like
range.
Alzheimer's. I mean, yeah.
Like
you mentioned
what kind of treatments?
Well, I mean, those are upcoming in the pipeline. But right now, we have not too long ago, a couple of years ago, we had the first FDA approval for treatment for Alzheimer's disease, right?
Okay.
A major breakthrough in that landscape, right? So we have the infrastructure and the framework from Alzheimer's disease to really guide us in terms of how to deal with these types of brain diseases.
So if you can get yourself, if you do have these symptoms, you get to your doctor, you get to a neurologist, there is possibility of at least slowing things down.
Right now, we're not in the place, we can manage people's symptoms.
Okay.
We can't treat CTE, which is specifically a disease characterized by abnormalities in the tau protein.
Okay.
But we can help manage symptoms,
Okay.
yeah.
So, Michael Alosco, I have a couple of things. Because you touched on safeguards or whatever word you use.
Yeah.
Those weird Guardian caps atop helmets that, sadly, at least in my estimation, very few NFL players, even though they're allowed to wear them, actually wear. It's individual choice. Is there evidence that they actually help, or is it a performative thing?
Yeah, I don't think we have great data yet on how helpful those are or how effective they are. You know, the theory is that you have these pads in your head, it absorbs some of the force, and then your brain doesn't rattle as much in your head, and you don't have much injury. But I'm not sure yet. I think the jury's still out on if those are effective.
Okay, so something where I assume the jury is not out, I hope is not out, is Chris Nowitzki mentioned us years ago. I think it was his concept. The under 14 don't play tackle football. I know he was lobbying on Beacon Hill and around the country. How far has that flag football only for under 14 thing gotten, or is it happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the numbers, you see increases in flag football, declines in tackle football. So I think that is a reassuring change in numbers. I think policy-wise, I think that's still, and law-wise, I think that's still something to be worked on moving forward and continue to advocate for. But I think we've seen a real change in numbers.
Last thing from you, because there's a Trump angle on everything. You got $15 million last year from NIH, which I assume is a critical funding. You said we need more funding to Marjorie a minute ago. Is your federal funding jeopardized? Is this whole process jeopardized because Donald Trump doesn't like anybody who's from Massachusetts or whatever they don't like?
You know, I hate to think that it is, but it is certainly a day of way more uncertainty of what we can expect in the future for funding. And so, you know, right now we're in a place that we can continue our research, but it is harder and it is more challenging, and discoveries aren't going to happen any quicker right now.
What is the thing Trump likes to go to all the time? The
WWE. He went to the Ultimate Fighting.
Yeah.
While Vance is attempting to negotiate the peace deal.
It looks like there could be a lot of concussions at the UFC fights.
Well, I mean, CTE's history is boxing. 1928,
boxing, that's
right? We've most people accept boxing, right, because the goal is to injure someone's brain, knock them out, right? So that's kind of, you expect there to be brain injury there.
Yeah.
But that's been around for a long time now.
Chris
also
Nowitzki
remember,
was a wrestler.
Yeah. Right, after he played football at Harvard,
and then he was a wrestler.
Pro wrestler.
We said that was all fake, though. All the
Not when you're on your head, it's not. Michael, congratulations on your work. Say hi to all your colleagues. We have great respect for all of them, and we hope to see you again soon. Good luck.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much, and good luck with this. We have been speaking with Michael Alosco. He's a licensed clinical neuropsychologist and associate professor of neurology at BU School of Medicine, where he also serves as the research vice chair, and he is co-director of clinical research at BU CTE Center. Thank you so much for coming in, Michael. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NAPM. Make sure to tune into Fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston coming up after this quick break. We're going to speak with veteran and executive director of the Center on Conscience and War, Michael Prysner, as more members of the military are seeking conscientious objector status now as our war with Iran continues. I'm Marjorie Egan, he's Jim Browdy, listening at BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted reporting is here for you every day on GBH Radio, and the best way to support it is by becoming a GBH sustainer. Sustainers make small monthly contributions that make a big difference. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Speakeasy Stage, presenting Swept Away. 4 New Bedford whalers must confront who they are and what they've done as they fight to survive a shipwreck, with music by the Avett Brothers. Opens April 24th. SpeakeasyStage.com.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. BostonSpeakers.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Hey, Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, I will be here with Shannon O'Brien, who for now anyway, is the chair of the Cannabis Control Commission. April 28th, it is a twofer. I will be joined from 11 to noon by Governor Maura Healey, and then from noon to 1 by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So since Trump and Israel's war in Iran began with the U.S. bombing of a girls' school on the very first day, the incoming calls to the Center on Conscience and War have skyrocketed. The nonprofit walks members of the military through their rights as conscientious objectors. Sort of harkens back, at least to Marjorie and me, to those 6 Democratic lawmakers who served in the military or intelligence service, including Senators Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, and Representative Chris Deluzio, who released a video last year, I'm sure you remember it, advising members to refuse illegal orders. Here's a piece of it.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
Joining us now on Zoom is the new executive director of the Center on Conscience and War, Michael Prysner, himself veteran of the Iraq War and a renowned anti-war organizer. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to talk to you. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't even know you could be. I thought you had to be a conscientious objector before you joined the military. I didn't know you could do it while you were already in there. So tell us about that.
Well, actually nobody's a conscientious objector before they join the military. Otherwise, they wouldn't have joined. Conscientious objector rights, most people probably remember or know about from the draft era in World War I, World War II, Vietnam. And that existed for people who were drafted who were from faith communities that prohibited use of weapons and violence and things like that, pacifist faith communities. But since Vietnam, that has really changed because we haven't had a draft. And during the Vietnam War, those rights were challenged in the courts to where only religious beliefs applied then. Since 1970, non-religious moral beliefs are just as valid as religious beliefs when it comes to conscientious objection. So those rights exist today for service members who joined the military and went through some kind of profound change. That's just the essence of being human. people change their beliefs, people change their viewpoints, especially since a lot of people join the military when they're very young. I joined the military when I was 17. I turned 18 in the military. So you have to imagine young people in particular go through a lot of shifts in their consciousness, especially when they're exposed to things like war and world events where they are directly involved in killing overseas. And so CO rights exist today to protect anyone who goes through a profound change and can then has a deep and firm and sincere belief that they cannot take part in any of this anymore. And these are legal rights that exist to service members. And, you played that video about the senators reminding soldiers that they have the right to refuse illegal orders. That is true. And what they're referring to applies to specific cases. If you as an individual soldier are ordered by your commander to do something that you believe is illegal, like kill a civilian, you are allowed to question and refuse those orders. But you can argue that this war is illegal. But there are no protections for soldiers who say, I'm not going to go to the Middle East because this war is illegal. They're not protected under the laws of illegal orders. They are protected under conscientious objector.
I know you haven't done. I assume you haven't done a poll, and your information is somewhat random. But does the average service member know that they have a right to conscientious objection, or is this something that's only on the margins?
We find that most commands who we have to give the conscientious objector package to, they don't know about conscientious objection. In fact, most of the investigating officers who have to process these packets have never seen one before in their entire career. And so, yes, it is a relatively unknown thing within the military. Just based on the callers that we've been getting, even if people know about it, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. They think they don't qualify. They think you have to be a pacifist or have to be religious or have to be opposed to all hypothetical possible wars that could come up. So there's a lot I think the most important thing is that if people question in any way, if they're questioning in any way participating in this war, the important thing is to call us and learn what those rights are.
Well, Michael Prysner, you mentioned joining the military when you were very young, and you also mentioned having one of those profound experiences that changed your mind. So what was it?
It was coming face to face with the Iraqi people, the people that we were occupying, that we were told, and I was told that we were there to save and give a better life, and found out very quickly we were not doing that. I think the difference between my generation of soldiers, I invaded Iraq in 2003, and the types of calls that we're getting today, the soldiers that are having this strong moral objection, this crisis of conscience like I had in Iraq, they're having that crisis of conscience now before they even go. And I think a big reason is that young people in the military, they are exposed through social media to the impacts of U.S. wars abroad, and in particular Israeli wars abroad that the U.S. is partnered in. For me, I wasn't looking, I didn't have a phone, I wasn't seeing Iraqi people suffering before I deployed to Iraq. I saw that when I was there on the ground. People that are getting orders to go to the Middle East today, they have spent years watching Israel attack Gaza and were horrified by those images. Felt there was some layer of separation between themselves and the Israeli government, even though dozens and dozens of service members did file as conscientious objectors, specifically because of what they were exposed to in the Gaza war. But today, they don't need to go to the Middle East to experience for themselves. You opened up talking about the bombing of the girls' school in the opening days of the war. That is like the number one thing we hear from soldiers who call us saying that they can't take part in this. They don't have to go there on the ground and witness the aftermath of a bombing to understand that they have a strong moral objection to it and hear that voice inside them telling them that this is wrong. I don't care what our orders are. I am not the kind of person that can take part in something like this. They see it now. They see it before they deploy. They see the families. They see the funerals. And that has been a driving factor in what's causing people to take this really heroic and bold stand.
I want to get to what some of the driving factors are. But speaking of you and following up on Marjorie's question, most of us heard of you for the first time a little less than 20 years ago when you made a speech to a Winter Soldier event. Here is the same Mike Prysner in 2008.
We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country. It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question.
So that was you, as I say, 17, 18 years ago. In addition to the bombing of the girls' school, which quite clearly came from U.S. weaponry, what are the other major reasons, Michael, that people in the military reach out to your center?
I think lately I think people are really horrified by the type of rhetoric they're seeing from their chain of command, their commander-in-chief, their Secretary of War, because there's, of course, the killing of human beings is a massive thing, right? The moral kind of weight that carries, like that's the job of the military, right? It is ultimately the killing of human beings for an end. So for people in the military to have to kind of grapple with that kind of job and being a part of an operation like that, but then to have their leadership gloating about it and celebrating it and putting together like entertainment videos, like these bizarre hype videos that the Department of War and the White House is cutting and posting, that is making a joke about it, that's gamifying it, that's producing content to entertain a small sector of the population that loves the killing of people because they hate them, not because they think they're killing people that are going to hurt them or attack the United States. They revel in all of the killing. The same thing is true for the blowing up of these so-called drug vessels off the coast of Latin America. No evidence is provided that these people are doing anything wrong, that pose any danger to the United States. And in many cases, we found out that these were just innocent fishermen that were fishing in their own seas. And so it's not only the gravity of having to take part in actions like this, but the fact that they are treated in such a repulsive and disgusting way by the chain of command. I think that's giving people a lot of pause to have confidence and trust in the commanders that are then at the same time saying, oh, this is an important mission, you have to trust us, we got to go do the right thing overseas. I mean, they don't have a lot of credibility when you look at the other things that they're saying and doing.
We're talking to Michael Prysner. He's the executive director of the Center on Conscience and War, and its website is centeronconscience.org.
I also read, Michael Prysner, the military has done a better job than most in integrating the ranks over the years. And I also read in one of these stories that some of the soldiers are upset about these crackdowns on DEI, crackdowns on women, crackdowns on African-American soldiers. How does that play in here?
This just goes back to what I was saying about the erosion of confidence in leadership. Look, the reforms by Hegseth, which particularly target black service members, which there is a long history of struggle in the United States. You're in Massachusetts, you were the epicenter of it, right? The fight for the right for black men to join the military and fight their former enslavers in battle. This is a struggle that was born out of your state and has a long history. And was really kind of a spearheading of the civil rights movement more broadly. The fight to desegregate the military was a part of laid the groundwork to desegregate education in this country. And so these are long-standing roots that are really important to the advance of civil rights in this country. Hegseth and the people around him, they want to turn that stuff back, not just in the military, but in the country more broadly. And so these are very obvious attacks on black service members, on women, on immigrant service members, of course, who are dealing with the deportations of their families and spouses as they were joining, specifically because they are told by their recruiters that we will get your family citizenship rights. And so it's obvious to people in the military what this is. Of course, there's people in the military who like it and support it, who are MAGA types themselves. I don't think they're a majority, but there's definitely a sector of the military that is repulsed by this, just like many Americans are repulsed by this.
So, Michael, I read about the process, and I, like Marjorie, didn't even know it was available, but the process is once you file, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, you will be withheld from combat while your conscientious objection status is being adjudicated. Have you found there to be repercussions against those who even apply for this while they're still in service?
Yeah, so the caveat there is the command should not deploy you if you file a conscientious objector packet. The way the regulation stands is as soon as you submit a packet, which you can do in a relatively short period of time. We've expedited CO packets and got them turned in within a matter of hours. As soon as your command has that packet, the regulations say your command is obligated to accommodate your beliefs, to make the best efforts to put you on duties that do not conflict with your beliefs. And so we make the argument that you cannot deploy someone in that situation. Since the war started, we have had we've had 5 clients who had imminent deployments who were literally hours or days away from deploying. 4 of those people, after our intervention, were able to get their command to keep them home. They took them off that deployment roster. That includes a combat soldier in the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, that unit that presumably would be the ground invasion force of Iran. One of those soldiers was sent anyway from Fort Bragg because his command very openly said, we are not going to follow the regulations. We're sending him, we're giving him a weapon. He has to fire missiles in this war. And so there's no guarantees. The important thing is that we have enough time to deal with those things. The soldier that was kept home, we maybe could have fought to keep him home if he was not hours away from a deployment when we made the intervention. So the important thing is soldiers who are questioning this to take action as quickly as they can so that we have enough time to make sure they're not forced to violate their conscience. And do any deal with repercussions? Some may deal with some kind of backlash, but their command is in violation of the regulations if they do that, and they are subject to complaints. They are subject to disciplinary actions, which we also have to do in some cases. It is your right. If you're a service member, it is your right to file as a CO at any time. It can be right before a deployment. It can be on a deployment. The timing of your submission, your command is not allowed to factor that into the validity of your claim, and it's not allowed to treat you any differently because of the timing of your claim. And so I think service members need to understand this is your right, and your command is obligated to follow the regulations which are in your favor.
You know, I was thinking last week when President Trump was talking about, blowing up bridges and blowing up civilian targets and
killing a civilization.
Killing a civilization and bombing back to the Stone Age. I was thinking of these young soldiers who, are not sure if this is going to happen or not. I mean, what do you hear about? But not to mention Hegseth, who seems to get excited about talking about death and destruction and lethality flying out of the sky. But that had to be a terrible moment for, I would think, thousands of young soldiers.
Absolutely. I mean, we got so many calls after that comment and people specifically referenced it. I don't want to be a part of something like that, right? And like I said, we have over 100 now clients, people who are actively filing as a conscientious objector since the war began. And this represents just a small sample size. Most people, not only do they don't know about conscientious objection rights in the military, even less people know that we exist and we can help them. So the number of people that call us and start this process is just a small fraction of a bigger something bubbling beneath the surface within the military. And now I think a big part of that, you mentioned that rhetoric, people join the military because, they want to be part of something good. They want to be part of something honorable. They want to be proud of what they're doing. And, they don't see a lot of opportunities in the American workforce to do something they can be truly proud of, where they have respect and dignity at the workplace. And so many turn to the military because they believe that they're going to be doing that. When we look at the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, those inflicted a lot of killing. Those endured a lot of death and injury by U.S. service members. But remember, there was like a massive operation, a public relations operation to convince the American people and soldiers and their families that this was a necessary sacrifice, that we had to do this because if we didn't, there was going to be another massive terrorist attack in the United States and thousands more Americans were going to die. And so even though you had the horrors of war that played out in those, you had some kind of convincing that was done by the leadership and the politicians and the government to tell you that this was a necessary sacrifice. None of that has been done for this current conflict. In fact, the opposite was done. Trump and Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and J.D. Vance, they spent the last couple of years telling us how stupid and pointless a war in Iran would be, that we had to elect them because they were the only ones who weren't dumb enough to do something like that. So then this war comes out of the blue, out of nowhere, partnered with a government that had just carried out horrific atrocities for years in the Middle East. No explanation was given, and then it just kind of keeps spiraling because the president seems like he's embarrassed, and that we keep going deeper and deeper to this simply because Trump is embarrassed by the fact that this war that he thought was going to be easy and last a week didn't go that way.
I am assuming that what the Trump administration would say about the rising numbers of people who are contacting you and similar dissatisfaction that maybe doesn't rise to CO level is, hey, we've seen an uptick in enlistments in the military. What do you say to that?
An uptick in enlistment, a large part of that is the lowering of standards because they were in a recruitment crisis for many, many years. And so there was a lot of efforts made to try to combat that. I think one good indicator is that while recruitment numbers may be up for a period of time, I'm sure the 2026 report might not be as shiny as they want it to be. Retention is way down. People are not staying in the military. And so while they're able to temporarily get a surge of people in, most people are getting out at this point.
One last, we only have a minute left.
Yeah.
You're a filmmaker in addition to everything else you've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or whatever. Tell us about the Earth's Greatest Enemy.
Sure. It's a documentary about the U.S. military's impact on the environment. It's coming out on streaming in a couple months. It's playing in theaters around the country. You can go to earthsgreatestenemy.com to see where it's screening. But I think the important thing about that film is warfare at the impact on humans, of course, is our first priority and care. But it has a major impact on the planet and life as we know it. And that's what that film explores.
We're going to see it. Michael, thank you for your work and your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
We have been speaking with Michael Prysner. He is a veteran of the Iraq War and a renowned anti-war organizer. He's executive director of the Center on Conscience and War. If you want more information or you know somebody who wants to become a conscientious objector, the website centeronconscience.org. That's centeronconscience.org. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to change tune, tenor, whatever, a little lighter. We're going to get a taste of overlooked Vermont wine industry with Bonde Wine Shop's Bertil Jean-Chrotenberg. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, springtime. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming, and a massive cloud of pollen is blanketing the air and coating our windshields and our sinuses. Is it just us, or does pollen season somehow seem a little bit worse every stinking year? Turns out there is an answer. Join us to find out on the Curiosity Desk, today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA.
And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow with the Cannabis Control Commission Chair, Shannon O'Brien. April 28th, which is a Tuesday, we have the first hour with Maura Healy joining us here at the library. Second hour with Michelle Wu joining us at the library. Time for a brief break from the news because we all picked the wrong week to quit drinking, as Marjorie would say, or Leslie Nielsen would say. Wine, local wines to be specific, from the Green Hills of Vermont, home to a thriving, though overlooked, wine industry. The state has 4 growing regions where different soils and microclimates create interesting bottles that are starting to get more national attention. To guide us through this sort of local wine scene is Bertil Jean-Chrotenberg. He's the sommelier and owner of Bonde Wine Shop in Harvard Square, which is dedicated to American eco-responsible wines. He'll tell us what that means in a minute. Bonde Wines with an E, correct? BONDE wines.com for events and info. Bertil, it's great to see you again. Welcome back.
You too, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks for the break.
First of all, this is radio, but you look spectacular.
You do look good.
You come from Paris. You get that beautiful Parisian style. So tell us about Bonde Wine.
That's a small shop in Harvard Square. Will exist for 5 years now in July. and my mission is to promote and sell only eco-responsible, mean organic, biodynamic, sustainable, natural, and regenerative vineyard and winemaker from United States. So very small artisan.
And the less I know about wine, the more comfortable I'm going to feel coming into your shop. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
No, because it's no pretension. I first listen to you. I take on consideration what you're looking for, your budget, and what you want pair with the wine. And the things at Bonde is very particular, and we are the only one to do that. You can try the wine before you buy it. So I'm against blind dating with wine.
Oh, very good.
You know, you told us this when you were here a few months ago, but for those who didn't hear and aren't familiar with your place, you were a very big deal in the wine and restaurant industry for all your life. And as your self-description, you have this small wine shop now on Church Street in Harvard Square. How did you get from being a little boy in Paris to all the things you did to this? What was that route?
The route is after 42 years to run an own restaurant and big operation. It was time for me to go back to a scale of human and contact and to feel good with myself. It's a limit you can be grind by the system. So for me, it's to just lay back and go back to have pleasure with what I love and what I'm passionate for.
I want to be when I grow up, Bertil. Let me tell you right now. So when did the Northeast, we were talking about, I don't even know, when did the Northeast become a region that was respected in the wine world?
So let's talk about not respect, but the reality. We are way before the West Coast, the first colony here. So the Pilgrim arrive and are the first to try to plant. Simple example at the level, or it was vineyard around the coast. Martha's Vineyard is known because it was full of vine. It's not because somebody planted a vineyard there. The problem.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
I know.
Never occurred to me.
Never occurred to me either.
Until just now.
Yeah.
How sad. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bertil.
So no, the entire coast or United States is full of Vitis lambrusca, and Vitis riparia are the American Vitis. The problem, we know them. We name the muscadel. They are horrible. If you try to make wine with, it smells and tastes like weed, like fox. And that's horrible. So the first attempt for the colon to plant was a disaster. And especially because we have two main problems in the North Coast. On the East Coast North is we have the phylloxera. It's a small Icarian, kill the vine if they are European vine. And the second things, we have fungus here. All the disease, black rot. And
is that the humidity? Is that
that's
why?
the humidity, yeah, that's our climate.
And they don't have that in California?
No.
But isn't there a third thing? I mean, at least as a consumer, I have no expertise at all. Cold water climates are harder, and so I almost hate to say this, but has climate change helped the industry in this part of the country?
It changed, but more to that is the bad things we did to Europe went back to us on the good things. Europeans have tried to export or bring back some Vitis, American Vitis in Europe to try to produce new type of vine. They bring the phylloxera with, and that's the famous plague of the disease of all the vine in Europe. And that's obliged the European to develop what we name hybrid. So cross-pollination, not manipulation, but just natural cross-pollination between Vitis vinifera, to it's the vine of the Europe, the Asian vine, and the Vitis lambrusca or riparia, to it's our Vitis. We try, and the first will do that. It's Mr. Norton in Virginia, and only 30 years later, Ebenezer will do the Concord grapes. Will be recognized by Harvard as one of the first American hybrid.
Concord grapes.
Yes, the Concord grapes.
So is this from, what did you bring it? Is it from Vermont?
Yeah, and what I want just before doing that, so you understand,
Yes.
You have a wave of in and out with this hybrid, but the big developments came on the 70s when the government decided to have the University of Minnesota with UC Davis and Cornell develop new vine. And what is fabulous to arrive to Vermont, Vermont in the 70s came the heart of planting and developing this new hybrid.
Wow.
And so what I bring today, it's something very particular because it's not exist anywhere. This vine exists just at Lincoln Peak. It was one of the testing hybrid Lincoln Peak plant on the 80s and 90s. This one is from early 2000. It was named the Farnworth because it was the first name of the owner of this farm at the start. And it was owned by Shelburne forever, Shelburne Vineyard, as the testing field for the University of Minnesota and Cornell.
So where in Vermont? Where is Lincoln?
So you know where is Shelburne?
Shelburne Falls, like near Burlington? Yes, I do.
Yes. So
right there, okay.
15 minutes, 10 minutes drive before that's when you are at the start of the lake. That's where is Lincoln Peak.
Yeah,
this is
on Lake Champlain.
Higher mountain to hike in Vermont.
Really?
Yeah, so you want to have a beautiful...
But I will be having a sip of this right here.
So this is fabulous because Shelburne sold the vineyard 2 years ago to a fabulous young couple.
Oh.
Kevin.
Oh, I read about them, actually.
And, sorry.
You inviting other people to this party that we don't know about, or what?
Yeah, do you staff?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
how
everybody.
nice.
Thank you very much.
You know, they are way better when they are drunk. So.
Come on.
All right.
How do you know that? That's true, actually.
So
that's what we say.
Yeah, I know.
Incredible.
Here we go.
Okay. You're a famous sommelier. Am I supposed to do this, or is that a bunch of baloney?
No, that's baloney.
Okay, good.
Just stop
good.
it. Just stop
that's
it.
so good to hear.
Just stop it. That's
okay. All right.
Wine is a very simple product. It's a farm product, so just gentle. And,
that is
and
really,
just.
what do you think of this, Jamie? Pretty good, right?
Oh my goodness.
It is really. That is spectacular.
Oh my goodness.
So how would you describe this? I don't even know how to describe it.
So what is interesting with the Farnworth, and it's funny, Minnesota decided to not release as commercial this hybrid because the crop is very, very small. So it's a lot of work for not a lot of grapes. But the quality of these grapes, it's absolutely fabulous. It's what I love with all these hybrid. They are earthy, they are rustic. They bring us back to what was true grapes before we play with clone to arrive to have some things more refined, luxury, etc. To what is 5% of the consumer.
By the way, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because they're checking our intern Ronan's ID before we allow him to taste the wine. As soon as we check, stay tuned, Ron. Be well.
One of these stories, I read something interesting that in France and other European countries, wine is much more a part of the regular day. People might have some at lunch and some at dinner. Yeah. And Americans are less likely to do that. And so Americans are more focused on the quality of the wine because they're drinking less of it. Is that true?
That's right and wrong on the same time. Sorry. So the reason why European or all the old world consume originally more wine, that's because the wine was the water.
Yeah.
And that's from 6,000 years ago. It's the only way you can drink liquid because wine is 70 to 75% water. With very low alcohol, not who we are now, but you know the alcohol of a beer, 4.55% alcohol, and that was permit to their liquid to stay stable and not create dysentery. So it's the way to avoid to drink putrid water. So on the culture, human in old world have always drinking wine to drink water. To the point, just recently. France passed the health restriction to limit it from 3 liter to 1.5 liter a day maximum.
Oh.
So, Bertil, before you go, one of your areas of expertise, obviously, because of the wine shop, is American wines. How would you rate the quality of Trump wines, for example?
It's, I'm sorry, I don't speak English.
Okay, I think that answers.
Oh my goodness, this is delicious.
This is really delicious. It is great.
You're welcome, and that's.
And we can pick this up in Harvard Square at your beautiful wine.
Bertil, we thank you. We always enjoy talking to you. Thank you so
Cheers.
much. Make sure you
Cheers,
patronize this place. It's a great small spot in Harvard Square. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Hey, last time you were here, I wasn't here, so I'm glad to meet you this time.
Oh, that's right, you weren't.
Yes, that's right. Bertil Jean-Chrotenberg of Bonde Wine Shop. And it's spelled B-O-N-D-E, and the website is BONDEwines.com in Harvard Square. Unless you know about wine, the more you're going to feel comfortable in that store. That's a big thing for me. Thank you so much for coming in.
Be well.
Okay, after this quick break, we're going to get your thoughts on something. Free therapy at the hairdresser or the barber shop. Beth Teitel has this great article in the Globe today talking about hairdressers. Some of them are sick of being unpaid therapists. We're going to open the lines to talk about your interactions with your barber, the person that's doing your balayage or putting in your highlights in your hair. Do you confess everything in your life to them? Do they confess to you? Do you like doing it? Are they sick of it? Are you sick of it? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Being an accountant is a full-time job, so when John Summit's DJ career started to take off, he had to make a choice. Spoiler alert, he's no longer an accountant.
This recent album's called Control Escape, and it's kind of overall theme is like when I broke out of the 9-to-5 world.
I'm Elsa Chang, John Summit's journey from cubicle to main stage DJ on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com. And Windhorse Counseling, believing care is a shared process. Their counselors work with clients of all ages to help create space for reflection, creativity, and balance. Learn more about their team at windhorsecounseling.net.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The cost of everything in Trump's economy, including therapy, is so high that hairdressers are slapping, this is true according to Beth Teitel, no trauma dumping pins on their clothes just to stay sane as they do their work. We all know the drill. You sit with your behind in the barbershop or salon chair. They flick that gown over you. And before you know, if you're dishing out about your kids, your insufferable, demanding boss. Who wrote this, by the way?
Beth Teitel.
No, it wasn't what I was talking about.
Oh.
I was talking about your insufferable, demanding
boss. Oh, okay.
Your ex-husband and the daily
is.
dramas of life in 2026 dumpster fire America. Beth Teitel of the Globe is out with another great piece highlighting the plight of the hairdresser who quietly absorbs it all while transforming you into the best version of yourself. So the lines are open. We're a little bit behind, so call soon. 877-301-8970. Hairdressers, barbers, please call in with your thoughts. Do you like the chit-chat? Maybe it helps the day go by, or you like the relationship-building part of your job. And for the rest of us consumers, how do you navigate that relationship in the chair? Think of this segment, I guess, as your own hairstylist chair. With us as your lifestylist gossiping together. The number is 877-301-8970. The guy, Alfred, who cuts my hair at Corbu in Harvard Square, used to be Alfred Hair Design.
Yep.
He's a good friend of mine for 40 years. I honestly feel, I hadn't thought about it till this morning, I could talk to him about anything. He's a good friend of mine, too.
It's true.
What do you do when you get your hair done?
Oh, I've gone to the same hairdresser for years. Her name is Lindsay. I love her. She tells me all about her young children. She's got 2 little children. Now I heard about her wedding, so I know about the guy she married.
How about you? Do you talk?
I do.
Do you badmouth me or not?
I do. I spend a lot of the time. She says she listens to us, and she doesn't know how I do it. She thinks I should get some kind of award or medal for my duress. But anyway, it's great. We can compare stories, but a lot of people do not like this. Beth interviews this person, Lucy, from Lucy Danger Hair. And poor Lucy just can't take it. She said she's heard about the worst possible things. People come in and tell them about their sexual abuse or some horrible thing where somebody in the family killed a pet. And they go on and on about every tragedy in her life. And she says many days after work, she pulls into her driveway and just sits there staring into the abyss.
Did you ever think before, I'm embarrassed to say, because I am pretty open with Alfred, even though I'm not in much of the world, as you know.
Yeah, that's right. We should call Alfred to get the goods.
Do you ever think, you know Alfred, actually.
I do?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you do. You've met him. Have you ever thought about the plight of the recipient of the information that you're providing?
I thought I was being charming. I thought she'd love to talk to me. Maybe she doesn't. But a lot of these people that do hair, apparently, they can't take it because of the. They feel as though all these, as I say, trauma dumping is dumped on their lap. And what are they supposed to do? This one woman actually who did hair first, she opened a place called, I think it's, where's it called? Psychotherapy, as in psychotherapy.
I love that.
She went to school to become a psychotherapist, and then she decided to combine it with her hair salon. So she's prepared to tell people what to do, because the problem is, I think it was a very clever insight in one of these stories. It says, therapists tend to be very proper. They're worried about boundaries. They're trained, and they're not really like a stylist who might be more fun. Stylists don't have to be proper. She said it this way: a therapist is kind of eating something that's healthy and low-cal, where the stylist is spicy and aromatic.
Well, I thought there was another angle. I thought that was good, but also, maybe you covered this, is the point that for the customer, one of the reasons you might be willing to talk to your hairstylist or whatever you call them, hair cutter or whatever, versus a therapist, is to go to a therapist, you're making an acknowledgement you have an issue. And a problem,
that's right.
Potentially.
That's exactly true.
You don't have to do that. This is a more casual
that's
thing.
Right.
But I also, how about the other direction? How do you feel when they're talking to you nonstop? Or do you want to just sit there in peace and have your neck massaged and your haircut?
I love it because I like to hear all the updates on the, when she was getting a wedding and it snowed before the wedding and she was doing it outside, and then we heard about that. And then I heard about her pregnancy and how the delivery went. And when she went on maternity leave, I was very upset because she wasn't there. I had to get a substitute, wasn't the same. Then she came back and I talked about all the milestones of the kid.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I just love her.
Wait a second. This is an anonymous texter. I had to find someone new because mine turned out to be MAGA. Didn't you have that?
Yes.
Didn't that happen to you?
Oh, before I ran into Lindsay, who's great, I was in another salon, and I began to and I'd been with this woman for like 10 years, and her daughter went to the same college my son went to. We bonded over that. I began to realize she was a Trumpster, and I just couldn't take it. This is before he even
Did you say something to her, or
I
you
didn't
just
say
left?
anything. I made up a story. I said I was going to go to my cousin to get my hair done. I didn't want her Trumpy fingers.
Your cousin who had a problem with the ice dams?
No, not that cousin.
Okay, so
that cousin.
Our colleague Maddie, who is our colleague here, I tell my stylist about Jim and his weird habits every time I go. Highlights include the single bag shrimp, I do that, and the clear ice extravaganza. Anonymous texter, my favorite part of a haircut is when they use the blow dryer because it's too loud for them to talk to me anymore. Let's go to Sophia. Obviously, people have thought about this. Sophia in Cambridge, you're first or next or something. Hi.
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 My hairdresser's name is Solange, and she actually lives right behind you, Jim.
Oh, my goodness.
In Inman Square she does?
Maybe we should call her up.
Yes, and the reason she lives behind you is because I, as her customer, got her an apartment.
You're like a real estate deal?
I'm a connector.
I like that. And what's your relationship like with her?
We're like sisters now.
Wow.
She had come from a Newbury Street salon, and she was tired of being dumped on by all the customers who were mean and rude. So she went to another place, and I went to her because I'd heard that she did all of the Newbury Street hair without the Newbury Street price and the attitude. And she's the sweetest thing under the sun. She's incredibly bubbly. And one day when she looked stressed out, and I said, is there something going on in your life? And she's like, oh my gosh, my landlord's going to sell his place. I have no place to live. so I found her an apartment, suite, helped her move. And she's now living in a community of my friends who absolutely adore her.
That's a fabulous story.
So I think that there's a lesson to be said for you to be really kind to your hairdresser.
I love them.
Because they're human. They're
Oh,
human
no,
and
this
they're
guy is
wonderful.
ultra human. I love the guy. You don't even have to convince him. I'm not going to find him a place to live, but I do love him.
No, it's her. It's her.
Oh,
her
her.
name is Solange, and her hair. She does hair so beautifully. I want to sponsor her to open a salon called Solange Salon.
Oh,
I love that.
like
Solange Salon.
Sophia,
Thank
thanks
you for
the
call.
Thanks for describing
now,
the
one of our
relationship, too.
texters says, I ask my hairdresser if she wants to talk or just be quiet. And she says she keeps it light. She doesn't throw all her problems or her politics at her. And then this other person says, I'm a shrink. When I let a hairdresser know I'm a shrink, it tends to flow the other way, says Tom from San Diego. And then somebody else says, I am lucky and cheap enough to have so little hair. I just talk to myself in the shower while my hair gets buzzed.
Fairly funny.
It's a pretty good one.
877-301-8970. What's that? Oh, the button. What does the button say? Please no trauma dumping. Can you imagine a hair person actually wearing how offended would you be if you were the would-be trauma dumper?
You'd be. I guess you would be pretty offended.
Marjorie
There's somebody
lied to her hairdresser, who was MAGA, to get out of going there. I want
did.
people to know. For people who think Marjorie's a saint and I'm an a-hole.
I did. I said I was going to my cousin
I
to
don't
get my
lie
hair
to my
cut.
hair guy. Well, occasionally I lie to my hair guy, but about small things.
Okay, so in the industry, the problem of being everyone's quote-unquote unpaid therapist is so big it required 2 episodes of something called S blank blank blank. The S blank blank blank, I told my hairdresser.
I never heard of
Apparently
that.
it is a podcast.
I know that.
It is a podcast, and they talked about that. And then some of these hair salon people wondered if they need to get some kind of professional training to deal with the mental health issues of their clients.
Listen to this anonymous texter. I don't know if this is true, but that's what they wrote. I wear fake hearing aids to my barber because he talks nonstop and has horrendous breath.
Oh,
now,
God.
Let me ask, thank you. What do you do? How do hearing aids help with horrendous breath? Exactly,
they don't.
Marjorie.
They
Thanks.
don't
Think
help.
about it for a while. Call me tonight.
They don't help.
Okay. Jamie just wrote, I'll be wearing one tomorrow.
Okay.
That's good.
Elizabeth from
My
Providence,
breath
thank
is
you for
good
calling.
anyway. Hi, Elizabeth. What's up?
Hi, I have heard the most appalling things that other people have said while in the hair salon. It's just embarrassing. And so I have a strict policy of not sharing anything personal, and I found a hairdresser who, if I want to talk, she'll talk, and if I want to be silent for 45 minutes, she is good with that too.
Isn't that, I mean, that is what you describe, I think, is the goal of every customer, isn't it? That they be the determinant, they be the determining player in the relationship. But what I'd never thought about before, Elizabeth, let's assume on a day you want to talk, your hair person, like as we've read in this piece by Beth Eitel, doesn't want to talk. How do you deal with that?
I would never tell her anything more than like where we recently went on vacation.
Oh, okay.
We have a very light, and I have been known to lie to other hairdressers who want to get into personal details. I'll just make crap up. And
Beautiful.
I
like your spirit.
Left hair relationships because they want to talk too much.
Elizabeth, you have very strong opinions about your hairdresser. We appreciate you sharing them.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the call.
Here's a good one. Peter
Yep.
in Rehoboth. I'm black and Hispanic. Our barbershop experience is a little bit different. I used to get my hair cut by my old barber, but he used to ask me so many medical questions because I'm a doctor at a nurse's practice or a nurse practitioner or something. He used to drive me nuts. The questions would be so intricate and involved. And one time he even brought his sister with his mother's medical record asking if they should sue for how the mother was treated. And that was the last time Peter in Rehoboth went to that particular barber
By the way, for people who find this weird, who haven't experienced this, we haven't talked about the reason. In my opinion, the reason, it's a pretty intimate experience, isn't it? How many other people are massaging your head and touching your neck and whatever?
Exactly. One of the theories about why it's easier to talk to your hairdresser than it is to talk to a therapist, and probably you can't afford talk to a therapist because they're so expensive and so many don't take insurance, is the angle. The hairdresser's standing behind you and they're not looking directly in your eyes, they're looking at you in the mirror. And then there's more of a power imbalance because you're in the chair and the hairdresser is standing up. So it has sort of like they're more an authority kind of figure.
Is this your thinking or Beth?
It's in one of these stories.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's in one of these stories. And I think that makes sense. You're not looking at someone eye to eye like you would a therapist. It's
But you do make eye. Don't you look in the mirror when you're talking to your hair person?
Yes, but it's less threatening, supposedly, for the hairdresser looking at you in the mirror instead of directly at you.
You know what I do, which is maybe helpful
you've
to
done all
you.
these horrible things, and they may have to report you to the police.
You know what's key? If you're doing something you're not proud of, when you're looking in the mirror up at the hairdresser, Marjorie, close one eye. I found that to be a whatever.
Okay, this poor hairdresser is talking about from clients unloading divorces, addiction, family chaos, life disasters, to stylists burning out because they don't know how to set boundaries. This is what they said in this podcast. This podcast discussed why salons have to quietly set up boundaries because they have become the front line of mental health counseling without the training or the support or the money.
This is a good one, John from Boxford. You need to do this segment with dentists. The hygienist at my dentist is a MAGA Trumper who goes on and on while my mouth is stuffed with dental crap, and I want to scream. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not fair.
That's called captive audience.
Yeah, when you can't really talk when you're at the dentist, can you? The dentist is having a conversation with you, you're unable to answer. 877-301-8970 is the number. We're talking about, Dan Randolph says, my barber does not speak English. Perfect. That's his opinion. Okay.
Violet from Boston, I wanted to point out that hairdressers can get continuing education credits to learn how to diagnose scalp and hair conditions like alopecia and dermatitis. What does that have to do with our discussion at all?
Well, I think they're talking about...
you don't have no idea.
No, that's good that they have that education to do that.
What's got to do with confiding in your hairdresser or vice versa? Nothing.
Well, it doesn't, but she just wants you to know that if you have those conditions like dermatitis...
Oh, it's sunny out, too. That has nothing to do with it, but it's nice to know. And so... Do you want to talk to Edgar?
By the way, someone just texted about the glass of wine next to my computer. Yes, it's here because we just had a segment on wine. I don't usually drink wine
from Bonde Wine
during
on
the
Church
show.
Street in Harvard Square.
Yes.
It's fabulous. It's from a Vermont vineyard called Lincoln Peak, and it's Farnsworth 2024. It's really, really good. Edgar is with us. Edgar, do you talk to your hair person, or does he or she talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. The thing that I like a little bit of conversation. I'll tell you why. Well, when I go to the barber, for example, which I need to do, I'm a little overdue for a haircut, but they'll often finish with the straight razor. And does it not strike you sometimes that they have essentially a weapon in their hand?
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly,
do you know what I mean? And
totally.
you just have this moment, every once in a while of, holy cow, this person has a sharp object right at my head, like I'm inside of some weird jacket. I don't have my arms. So a little bit of conversation to sort of make everybody feel comfortable, I think is good.
How do you feel about Marjorie, who most people consider to be like a saint, lying to her MAGA hairdresser?
I did.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you got to do what you got to do sometimes, Jim.
What was the movie?
Marjorie, if you're Catholic, you just go to confession after.
That's
so
right.
It's fine.
That's right. That's right.
What was what?
There was a movie about the barber that killed everybody in the chair with the straight edge. Remember that? Do you remember that, Edgar?
Yeah. It's the musical.
Musical.
Yeah, good God, what is it called?
Okay, I'm looking it up. Musical.
No.
Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd.
Aiden.
Yeah, don't go to Sweeney. Don't go to Sweeney Todd.
Exactly.
You'll be murdered in the chair.
Exactly.
Okay, what are you doing on the show?
Have you been keeping your eye on the AccuWeather tree pollen forecast, you two?
Oh, it's going to be bad.
Very high to extreme for the next couple of days. Yeah, it's going to be real bad. But we're gonna have a conversation about pollen and whether or not climate change is impacting how bad the pollen is. Does it feel to you a little bit like every year it's like, oh, the pollen's worse this year. It's worse and worse. So we're going to find out why. And we're also going to we've got an allergist with us who's going to talk about exactly what's happening when you do have an allergic reaction. How can you tell if it's an allergic reaction or just normal reaction to pollen? So we're going deep on pollen.
Apparently you are. We'll be listening. Edgar V. Herrick III, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Edgar. Watch out for those straight edges.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston.
It feels great, though.
It does?
It is scary.
I've never experienced
obviously, but it feels
But you better
so good.
make sure your barber's not Sweeney. Okay. Thank you for everybody. Keep down to the Boston Public Library. We appreciate
By the way, that
it.
was Chuck Todd's younger brother. Do you know that? Sweeney Todd. No, I was just... When you have to explain a stupid joke, you feel like more of a fool than when you first said
Younger
it.
brother.
Thank you. Somebody
Okay.
sort of thought it was funny.
Keep up with my 24/7 way of our podcast if you want to. We have a great TikTok page. Check that out. It's wonderful. Tune in tomorrow. Back at the BPL, Cannabis Control Commission, at least for now. The chair of that board, Shannon O'Brien, the ACLU's Kate Crockford. She's going to talk about protesting, people being photographed and surveilled during protests. Our national security expert, Juliet Kayyem, plus the next installment of our The Long Run series ahead of the Boston Marathon with local inclusive running clubs, Dream Far and Boston Bulldogs. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, additional support from Ronan Keene. We hope he was 21 because he had that wine. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Special thanks to BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Hannah Eckhart. Thanks to our host, the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk, which starts right after us. We're going to talk about pollen, and then the Culture Show with Jared Bowen starts at 2. I am Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow and have a great day.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, how did we get here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
And White Flower Farm, a mail-order plant nursery in Connecticut, offering garden plants, growing supplies, and gifts for gardeners. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, each and every paycheck has a certain amount withheld for state and federal taxes, for various government programs. Of course, you don't need a radio show to tell you that. What actually happens to all that money? Like, where does it go? Where is it stored? How does it get divvied up? And do we all benefit? We'll look into it. Then we follow the long journey of microplastics from our homes to the farthest corners of the Earth. Think Antarctica. Sorry to all the penguins. And forecasts for tree pollen in Boston this week range from very high to extreme, according to trackers at AccuWeather. Is it just us, or is the pollen getting worse by the year? We will investigate. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Some ships with links to Iran are transiting the Strait of Hormuz despite a U.S. naval blockade in place meant to prevent all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports. Here's NPR's Jackie Northam.
The Liberian flag Christiana is one of the ships, according to Kepler, a global trade intelligence provider, that crossed the Strait of Hormuz Monday evening after departing an Iranian port. Hours earlier, the U.S. military had set up its naval blockade. Several ships sanctioned by the U.S. for Iran trade, including the Rich Starry and the Elpis, also crossed the strait unimpeded by the U.S. Navy. Ships can mask their movements either by turning off their transponders or transmitting false data, known as spoofing. There are hundreds of oil tankers, container ships, and bulk carriers stuck in and around the Strait of Hormuz since the war began at the end of February. Few are willing to risk transiting the strait because of the danger. Jackie Northam, NPR News.
While the U.S. attempts to pressure Iran into agreeing to its terms for ending their conflict, it is also hosting ceasefire talks in Washington, D.C. today between Israel and Lebanon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he hopes a framework for peace comes out of the meeting. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf says the Lebanese government is under pressure to disarm Hezbollah.
That's because its loyalties lie with Iran, which has long funded and helped arm them. So it's really a question of how much can the Lebanese government really influence Hezbollah's actions. Israel won't agree to any deal unless there's a tangible plan with the Lebanese government for disarming Hezbollah. This has been a long-standing Israeli demand, but Hezbollah has rearmed regardless and has been firing near constant rockets into northern Israel during this war.
NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reporting. A central tool in America's intelligence apparatus will expire next Monday if Congress fails to renew it. NPR's Eric McDaniel has more.
Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act allows the government to collect the electronic communications of foreign nationals located outside of the United States without a warrant. And according to the government, the trove of information collected through the program informs a huge portion of the president's daily intelligence briefing. Sometimes, though, the surveillance targets communicate with Americans, and some lawmakers of both parties want to require a targeted court order before the government can peruse those specific calls, texts, and emails. The government says that reform would hamstring surveillance and jeopardize national security, and that process reforms enacted in the last few years are already leading to dramatically fewer searches. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, Washington.
Los Angeles school employees are not on strike after all, but got pretty close. A union representing support staff says it reached a tentative contract agreement early this morning on raises and other major gains with the district. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. After years of financial struggles, Hampshire College out in Amherst is closing at the end of the calendar year. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports the decision comes as experts predict hundreds of other private colleges could close or merge in the years ahead.
Hampshire leaders declined an interview request, saying they're focused on supporting the campus community amid news of the shutdown. The alternative liberal arts school with no grades or majors first opened in 1970. Michael Horn is co-founder of the Clayton Christensen Institute, which has long predicted widespread college closures. He says declining enrollment shows Hampshire's offbeat profile wasn't selling with potential students.
While they had a unique value proposition, the market was pretty clearly telling them it was a unique value proposition that was not valued.
Horn says changing demographics are making it harder for small colleges like Hampshire to survive. Kirk Carapezza, GBH News.
The parent company of 7-Eleven plans to close 645 convenience stores across North America, potentially including a bunch here in Massachusetts. Norwood Patch reports it's part of an effort to streamline operations and revamp its business model. Japan-based 7&I Holdings disclosed the planned closures in a recent earnings report. There are over 150 7-Eleven stores in Massachusetts, but it's not known yet how many will close. Sunny near 80 today. Newsflash Nancy says pollen is what happens when flowers can't keep it in their plants. 78 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I am Edgar B. Herwick III, and we are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. By the way, we are back at the Boston Public Library in person this Friday. No tickets needed. Come see us. In case a reminder is helpful in general for you, you have today and tomorrow to file those taxes. Now, here at the Curiosity Desk, we want to devote a little bit of time to decoding as best as we can the U.S. tax system and your paycheck, breaking down how it works and what exactly is going on. For example, when you get that weekly pay stub from an employer, you typically see a lot of things taken out: federal, state, PMFL, so on and so forth. Our question: what is actually happening to all that money? Where do the dollars and cents end up? And then how do they get portioned out? And more importantly, does it somehow make our lives easier? With us over Zoom to answer those questions and more, and maybe have a little fun with taxes, we are joined by Stephen Dean. Stephen's a professor of law at Boston University. Stephen, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Edgar. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk broadly. That I as best as you can you explain like where the money goes? So I get a paycheck, and we'll break down what some of those line items are. But there is money that is, the word that it gets used is withheld, but it's essentially taken out of my check. By whom? Is it the employer holding on to that? And then what do they electronically transfer it somewhere? Do they write somebody a check? Like, what happens to the money?
That's a great question, and one that's not asked often enough, I think. It's good that you're bringing curiosity to tax law. Not often enough. That's great. I love it. So generally, there are really big payroll processing companies, and they do most of the actual legwork here. But at the end of the day, where the money goes depends on what line item you're talking about. There are, as you mentioned in your intro, there are state, local, federal, all sorts of sort of destinations for this money, and where it all goes depends on which specific item we're talking about.
All right, well, let's start talking about some specific ideas. Let's start with the big ticket item, which is the federal income tax. That tends to be the biggest sort of bunch that comes out. This is, so I think somewhere between like 10 and 37%, depending on the amount of money you're making. What is this bucket of money? Where is that going, and what is that paying for? Is it paying for the entirety of the federal government? Like, what's happening to that line item?
So that is that's the key one, as you note, and for most individuals, that's the one they feel most acutely. That's the one that takes the biggest bite out of your paycheck, and that really funds not everything, but a lot of things. It funds the military, it funds all the federal programs that we enjoy. It also funds programs that are delivered through the tax code, like the Earned Income Tax Credit. Which, as you may know, is a refundable tax credit that helps support low-wage workers. And it's really one of the most important sources of support for those kinds of families.
And so that money in particular, that federal income tax, when that comes out of your paycheck, does the government have like a bank account that goes into? Does it go to like the federal, like where does it go?
So, where exactly it goes, I'm not sure I can tell you. That is one of the great mysteries. But
nobody will ever know.
Do we want to know? Really?
Yeah, probably not. Great point.
I'm not sure. Watching the sausage be made. So all the money will end up in different pots, and which pot will again depend on what it is. But the federal revenue, and again, there are different kinds of withholding that are federal as well. There are the payroll taxes that are distinct from the income taxes, but the income tax revenue that goes in, and of course, corporations pay corporate income tax. The withholding works differently for them, obviously, but there are different sources of federal revenue, and those all together, the corporate income tax, the payroll tax, and I suppose now, although it's even more mysterious than these, customs duties, tariffs, where all that money goes is really not super clear, even to someone like me.
All right, we are talking with we are talking with Stephen Dean, BU law professor, about our taxes, where they go. Next line item I see is social security tax. So this is a federal tax as well, but it's split out. And this is at 6.2%. And is that flat for everybody? Everybody's paying 6.2% of their income into Social Security, and that goes to a specific place.
So so the idea of Social Security is that it's designed to be distinct from the general pot of money. So the Social Security tax is paid in part by individuals, in part by employers. We don't really see that part, but that's part of what's happening. And that is actually getting paid out currently to current retirees. So it's styled as though it's going into a big account somewhere, but it's not really true. The system was designed so that current workers pay current retirees. So we like to think that there's a big big bank account that's going into, but that is going in one door and out the other.
Gotcha. And this is one of those where I'm paying a certain percentage of it, but my employer is also paying this tax. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Okay, then Medicare tax, that's another tax. So I'm going to assume this, like Social Security, is split out, and that's also going to pay for the people who are using Medicare as, sort of in real time as we speak. Is that right?
Exactly right. So for things like Social Security, that's especially an issue because you have to make sure there's a balance between current workers and retirees. And with certain demographic changes, that's where you get the concern that Social Security will run out of money. It won't ever run out of money exactly because we'll always have some current workers. But if the balance is off between current workers and current retirees, then you get that problem.
So with our federal income taxes, there's this progressive nature to it. It's like depending on how much you're making, you're put in a different bracket, you're paying a different rate. You may be paying different rates on different parts of your income. Is that true for federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare, or is it a little different for each?
So it's different for each. And the biggest difference between income taxes and payroll taxes is that payroll taxes only apply to the first certain amount of money you make. So roughly $100,000 or so, give or take. That's the only income on which you're going to pay those kinds of payroll taxes. So if you're a high income taxpayer, you can avoid, you actually pay, they're what we call regressive. So we generally have a progressive system where you pay not just more dollars for every dollar of income you earn, but you pay disproportionately more. But for payroll taxes, those disproportionately hit the low wage workers as opposed to the higher income folks.
All right, you're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking taxes with BU law professor Stephen Dean. Let's turn to the state because the state is also taking money out of the old paycheck. How does Massachusetts compare with other states when it comes to taxes? I mean, I've heard people say that the tax burden is higher here. Is that true? And what is coming out of your paycheck when the state of Massachusetts is pulling it out?
Sure. It's a great question and an important point. Different states approach this very differently. So some states have no income tax at all. Alaska famously pays its residents rather than taxing them. So depending on where you are, this can work very differently. But in Massachusetts, the state income taxes are relatively high. And in some jurisdictions, New York, for example, you can have a New York City tax as well as a New York State income tax. So it really does vary considerably depending on where you are.
And so here in Massachusetts, state income tax 5%. Is that pretty typical for what a state might pull out, or where does Massachusetts kind of rank?
I would say that's pretty typical for the kind of state that Massachusetts is. For New York, it's roughly similar. So yeah, it's again higher than states with a 0% income tax.
Sure.
But it's the pattern is that it's significantly lower than the federal, right? So it's that's the sort of thing that I would take away, that it's going to be smaller than the federal burden.
In general, when you point out there are states that don't have an income tax, presumably those states need to have revenue from somewhere. So in general, and again, it's obviously going to depend on the state. But in a commonwealth like Massachusetts, where 5% is coming out, and that's part of the revenue that the state's making, like how does another state like that doesn't have an income tax make that up?
It's a good question, and in some cases they may not make it up entirely. So there are a lot of fundamental decisions that go into how you collect your tax, and part of that is what kind of services you want. So if a state doesn't, at a state level, fund quite as much, they may have most of it happening through cities and towns and counties. So if the cities and towns and counties are the place where most of the revenue is collected, they're the ones that get to decide where it goes. And of course, that has all sorts of interesting complications for who gets to go to school, who doesn't get to go to school, whose dollars go to fund those benefits as well.
Then here in Massachusetts, we have PFML is a line item in a lot of people's paycheck. What is the PFML?
So the key letter in that acronym is the P part. So many people have heard of family and medical leave, right? So for a long time, not a long time, but for a while, we've had the federal law that allows workers to take time off in order to care for their own health or that of a loved one. And the benefit with the federal law is that your employer has to take you back if you do this. right? So that's a good thing. We definitely want workers to be able to take time off to care for those they need to care for without getting fired. But the problem with the federal the federal rule is there's no P there. So the P stands for paid. So in Massachusetts, there's paid family and medical leave. So the key there is that I think it's about 0.5% that goes out of your paycheck for this benefit.
Yeah, I think it's 0.46%. So yeah, it's about 0.5%. Yeah.
All right, if we want to be exact, 0.46.
I only say that because I have the notes in front of me. So
I respect that. And so the benefit of the P again, the paid, is that you're more likely to be able to take time off to care for your family or for yourself if you can actually do it with pay. And of course, there are limits as to how much pay you're going to get. If you're, a super high income person, you're not going to have your entire high income replaced by that program. But for a lot of, working folks, this is really the difference between being able to take time off to care for a child or a parent or not. And again, the federal rules make sure you don't get fired when you do that. But the Massachusetts rules actually allow you to get paid while you do it.
Stephen, while I have you, we got a comment on YouTube here from Katie, who asks, what is the most important thing for people in their early 20s working their first full-time jobs to learn about taxes? What would you say?
Sure. I would say the most important thing for somebody in their early 20s to learn about taxes is about another item you can have taken out of your paycheck. At most employers, not all, unfortunately, it's not universal. But for many employers, you can have voluntarily have your employer take out on a pre-tax basis money for retirement. And at most employers, you get to choose where that goes. And the magic of the system is that you're putting dollars away pre-tax. So this protects it from that whole alphabet soup of withholdings. You're able to put away every dollar you earn, or you put away all of some of the dollars you earn into this retirement account, and that you protect it from those withholdings. And you get when you compound it over time, it can be really powerful. So if you start that early, even if you don't, put away all that much, it's a good habit to get into when you're young.
You listen to The Curiosity Desk. We're talking with BU Law Professor Stephen Dean about taxes. It is that time of year. Stephen, obviously it stings a bit when you see these things come out of your paycheck, and it certainly can be a bit of a headache this time of year to do the whole filing your taxes thing. And, it can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes it can be daunting. Sometimes you end up owing a little bit more than came out of your paycheck, and that can be frustrating. But in general, the system itself, like what is there anything people ought to be keeping in mind in terms of paying their taxes just when this time comes around and you're feeling really frustrated? Give us a glimmer of hope, please, Stephen.
Oh, all right. Hope. I would say that what's so important about the system is that it works surprisingly well, right? So we can focus on the problems, and there are many, many problems. But the magic of the system is that we do this largely on a voluntary compliance basis, right? The system works well enough that nearly everybody pays nearly everything they owe. And it's done in such a seamless way that by the end of the year, most people will collect a refund. And if you could imagine a different system where you had nothing withheld and you just got a big bill at the end of every year, or the beginning of every year, well, I guess it's the same, that would really be unpleasant. So the way the system is designed, and guess depending on your politics, can either be good or bad, it's designed in a way so that paying your taxes is relatively painless, right? So if every April 15th, you wrote a check for 10 to 30% of your income, that would really hurt. But instead, it's taken out a little bit at a time, and you get to oftentimes get a refund that you can enjoy and feel good about. So the system is one that, by and large, and again, it's not perfect, really does fund a lot of important programs, both at the federal, state, and local level, without imposing a lot of headaches on folks.
All right. That's about as glass half full as you can get this close to April 15th. Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Boston University professor of law, Stephen Dean, about the taxes that come out of our paycheck. We would also be remiss if we didn't plug his book. It's called Racial Capitalism and International Tax Law, The Story of Global Jim Crow. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you helping people understand tax law better. It's really important.
All right, we'll talk to you next year again. After a quick break, the humble journey of a microplastic from your kitchen counter to the oceans of Antarctica. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Bob Odenkirk. He built a career playing men with more going on beneath the surface than they first let on. In the new film Normal, he stars in a story that pairs deadpan humor with action and stunt work and turns the idea of the average man into something considerably stronger. Odenkirk joins us with John Wick creator Derek Kolstad to talk about their new film and why normal is anything but. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com. And Newport Mansions, presenting Full Circle, Richard Fleischner with David Smith, Christo, Klaus Oldenburg, Barnett Newman, and other Monumenta artists. On view now through May 3rd at Rosecliff. newportmansions.org.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Quick note, we will be back live at the Boston Public Library this Friday. I hope you can join us there. All right, since the 1950s, the production of plastic has increased. In 2023, we humans produced 400 million tons of the stuff. And by now, you've probably heard about the tiny microplastics taking up space in our oceans, in our air, yes, even in our brains. But to know what we're getting ourselves into, you need researchers. Enter our next guest here via Zoom. We are joined by Dr. Victoria Fulfer. She's an oceanographic researcher who works to track how plastics move from land to sea and their impact on marine ecosystems. She's currently the microplastics scientist at the Five Gyres Institute of Science-based nonprofit organization focused on supporting solutions for plastic pollution. Welcome to the Curiosity Desk, Dr. Fulfer.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So you have studied microplastics in Antarctica. This is sort of like my brain kind of goes, does not compute a little bit. So can you explain why Antarctica and how did they get there?
Great question. Antarctica, because it's this remote place, right? No one lives there. Why would there be plastic there? But unfortunately, there is plastics. Plastic pollution and microplastic pollution is a global issue. It doesn't adhere to national boundaries. And so I wanted to go somewhere really remote where there aren't a lot of people and see how pervasive the issue really is.
So can you sort of take us sort of with you on how it is that you actually study this stuff? So let's say in Antarctica, what are you doing with your day to study microplastics?
Absolutely. So we're studying them in the air, the water, and the soil or the sediment under the water. And so, air is pretty straightforward. There's microplastics, unfortunately, floating around in the air. It's one of the major ways microplastics get all the way to Antarctica. They can travel thousands of miles from cities to remote places.
Just like floating in the air, just like on the wind current.
Absolutely. They're in the air all around us. There's microplastics that are particles that are in the air, but there's also microplastics that are fibers that are in the air. And those are the more common ones. They're coming off of our clothes and our textiles. And so that's one of the main ways they get to Antarctica. And so, but when we measure them in the air, we're looking at how much is being deposited. So you can do this in one really easy way, which is by setting out a small trap that has a sticky solution on it so that any particles that fall on it get captured. And then you look at how many are microplastics or not. You can also do it in a more active way by sucking in with a vacuum the microplastics from the air of a specific volume and looking at what you get.
What else? Wait, I just want to stop you for a second, because what else besides microplastics? What are you catching on a sticky trap? Like, what are the other things in the air? I'm just curious.
All kinds of things. You're going to have really small sediment particles if you're near land. If you're in a more urban area, you're going to have particles that come off of roads and cars, carbon. You're going to have some small microscopic plant matter. So you kind of have to sort through it all and figure out what's plastic and what's not.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so so that's sort of how you're doing it in the air, and then how are you finding it in the water?
So in the water, one of the main ways we do it is using something called a manta trawl. It's a special net that you pull behind a boat, and it captures microplastics bigger than 300 microns. So these are still pretty small, but they're not the smallest ones, and they're capturing it just in that surface layer of water. So then we capture all of that in the net, we filter it down, and we're able to look at the microplastics. But in that surface water, there's a ton of phytoplankton and zooplankton, or algae. And so when you look at it under a microscope, mostly you're seeing a ton of algae. You're seeing a lot of green, you're seeing a lot of life, and then a few microplastics. So we have to separate the organic from the plastics using chemistry to make that separation first before we can really look at microplastics.
And how hard is it to do that? How long does it take? Like, how do you use chemistry?
So we use acids to digest the organic matter, any of that living matter. And that can take some time, depending on how much is there. It might take a few days to really get rid of all of that plant matter, anything else that's in the sample. Then you're left with some other residue. Maybe there's a little bit of sand that was in the water or something like that. So then you use density. Microplastics are really light compared to something like sediment. And so if you put your sample in a dense solution, sediment and heavy particles will sink to the bottom and microplastics will rise to the top. And so you can filter them out in that way as well.
You know, we recently spoke with Jeffrey Marlowe on the show. He's a biologist at BU. He wrote a book called The Dark Frontier, which was all about the deep sea. And kind of in passing, when we had the conversation, he was talking about like these really remote places where they are finding microplastic like deep in the seabed, like at the bottom of the sea. You just point out these things are like super light. They can float on wind currents. How are they settling to the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, this is why microplastics are so complicated, because they start out as this inert, very light particle that you would think will just stay on the surface or in the air. But as they float, particularly through the ocean, other things attach to them. They get biofouled. Bacteria and other organisms will grow on the outside of the microplastics, and this changes their density. This makes them heavier. It also makes them stickier.
Yeah.
So the stickier they get with this, the more stuff's going to attach to them, and eventually they become something that can sink to the sediment.
And then it's just essentially dragged down to the bottom, and then things are over top of it, and then there it is. Do we have,
Absolutely.
I mean, so how sort of a big of a, I don't know if it's a problem, but do we have a sense of how much microplastic there is that is settling to the bottom? And is that something we are interested in knowing more about? And if so, why?
We're beginning to know more about this. More and more scientists are looking at microplastics in the sediment. The bigger question that you're asking is, how much of a concern is this? So our recent study showed that microplastics were found all throughout the sediment that had been deposited over the past 100 years. And so they are making it to the bottom, and they are being buried in that sediment over time. We know less about the impact that that's having. There are a lot of organisms that live in the sediment, and there's also a lot of bacteria and organisms that rely on a very specific chemistry of the sediment in order to thrive. So those microplastics can change the biochemistry of the sediment, and they can also impact organisms living in the sediment. But we don't have a ton of information yet on kind of the more long-term impact of that.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Victoria Fulfer about her research on the impact of microplastics in ocean ecosystems. How do you date the sediment? Like, how do you know you're looking at something from 100 years ago versus 50 years ago versus 10 years ago? Is it just like any archaeologist is kind of going through the layers? Like, how does that work? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, so in the ocean, we often, especially if we're looking at just about the past 100 years or so, we use radioisotopes. So they are certain chemicals that exist in the ocean naturally. They're naturally occurring. We didn't put them there. And we can look at the levels in the different layers of sediment, and that can tell us how long ago they were probably deposited. And then we can also look at other spikes. So we know, for example, if we're looking at radioisotopes, we can see very clear spikes of the years where we were testing atomic bombs back during the Second World War.
Wow.
And so you can also look for specific spikes like that, but more commonly we use lead-210, which is just a naturally occurring chemical.
It's so crazy because you sort of, in my head, it's sort of difficult to imagine. I mean, I guess it's of course, but the idea that things that we're doing up here on land are like having that kind of an impact on the sediment so far down in the oceans is a little bit arresting to a certain extent to realize that.
Really is, especially when you see such a clear increase in the amount of microplastics in the sediment when you go from, the 40s and 50s to today. You can see it decade by decade getting more and more contaminated.
So all of your work is not in Antarctica and far-flung places, and in fact, you've done a fair amount of work in Narragansett Bay, much closer to home here. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in Narragansett Bay around microplastics, what it's about and what you found?
Absolutely. So we started out by looking at the microplastics just on the surface sediment of Narragansett Bay. So that top layer of the sediment underneath the water, just to look at how big of a problem microplastics were right now. And we found that there were tons, literal tons of microplastics littering the seafloor. Really high concentrations near urban areas like the capital city of Providence, lower concentrations as you move towards the open ocean, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Fewer
not
people
surprising.
in southern
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And so that got me thinking, how long has this been a problem and how much is that problem increasing over time? And so that's where we started using those sediment cores that we were talking about, which are like a time capsule. You can go back in time in the sediment and see how much did we pollute in the 1960s versus the 1980s versus today. And so that's what we did. We took cores from all throughout Narragansett Bay. We went offshore into Rhode Island Sound and took cores. And we also took some cores from the salt marshes throughout the bay. And it was really interesting. We found in all the cores, obviously, we've continued to use plastic. We've continued to pollute. The pollution increased over time exponentially. But what was really interesting is that the salt marshes act as a natural filter. They're capturing 10 times more microplastics than the rest of the bay. And so this just gives us one more reason to preserve those marshes as much as we can.
So, you sort of talked a little earlier about the fact that we need a certain amount of long-term study to understand what it means, to have microplastics kind of, in the sediment below the waters. But what do we know, if anything, for sure about the harms to the ocean life, humans who are interacting with the ocean, or to your point, just humans in general, if there are microplastics floating around in the air around us everywhere? Like, what do we know about what is definitely bad, other than your intuition that says it's probably not good?
Yeah. So in terms of ocean and ocean organisms, we've been doing that research a lot longer than on humans. So we do know more there. We know that when many species ingest microplastics, they get gut blockages, they feed less efficiently, and so it's impacting their digestion. We know that it causes inflammation and stress responses, oxidative stress to their cells, changes in hormones, all of that. And so we know that those impacts are happening at kind of the organism and cellular level. What we know less about is kind of what that means for the whole community or the whole species as we're looking at between trophic levels in the ocean. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is part of it just the sheer size of the creature that we're talking about in terms of, like you say microplastic, so we know it's very, very, very small, right? But comparative, a tiny little fish is very small too, versus say a big old human like me or you. And so if you're talking about tiny little bit, just by sheer size differential, it may be going to have more of an impact on something smaller. Is that a variable here, or do we not know?
No, you're absolutely right. Size is definitely a variable. So is lifespan. Many organisms don't have the same lifespan as humans. They have shorter lifespans. Some have longer. And so all of that definitely does play a role. We do see more toxic impacts typically in those smaller organisms and less obvious toxic impacts in larger ones. However, there have been studies on for example, are whales, which are obviously much larger than humans.
Yes.
And we do see some similar concerns there as well. And so
interesting.
size plays a factor, but it's not the only one.
So, presumably, whether or not we know for sure what the level of these, sort of negative impacts are, we probably want to reduce the amount of microplastics that we're putting into the environment. When it comes to the oceans, what do we do? What are the best ideas out there right now? What are the solutions here?
There's a lot of solutions out there. We've been looking at solutions for microfibers. So those are the fibers that end up in the air and eventually will be deposited either in the ocean or on land. And so microfibers, a lot of them come from laundry, washing our laundry, drying our laundry. We're releasing millions and trillions of microplastics through these processes. And so by changing the design of our washers and dryers, by adding extra filtration, we can reduce that. We can also look at environmental capture. So I talked about how the salt marshes in Rhode Island were capturing 10 times more microplastics. We can use a nature-based solution to filter microplastics from coastal waters. So that last summer we deployed floating wetlands, which are man-made wetlands that are float at the surface of the water in areas where there aren't marshes. And we deployed them. One of them was up in Providence, in an urban area. And we tested how much they were filtering microplastics from the surface water. So that could be an option for more urban areas and for ports.
What, if anything, is the thing you want to know most right now as you sort of work in this environment, you work in this space? What's sort of the next thing right ahead of you where you're like, I want to find out this?
Oh, that's a big question. I think two things. I would love to see us come up with a biomaterial, a natural, safe material that can act a lot like plastic, because we do use plastic for so many things. We need it for so many things. We can't completely stop using it. So if we could come up with, a material that works very similarly, but is less harmful for the environment, that would be one thing I would love to see, but I am not an engineer, so that won't be my work. But for me, I would love to see more nature-based solutions. I would love to see urban areas and cities implementing rain gardens, floating wetlands, and other nature-based solutions to use the natural world to help us with this issue.
All right. We've been speaking with oceanographic researcher Dr. Victoria Fulfer. Thank you so much for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stay with us. Just ahead, how allergy season got so bad in Boston. Gesundheit, by the way. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
The runners, the crowd, the excitement. Marathon Monday is coming, and GBH News is keeping you informed with everything you need to know about the 130th Boston Marathon. Who's going to be there? Interesting facts and history, runner superstitions, and, of course, live race updates. Find us at gbhnews.org, on the GBH News app, or right here on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the library on Friday. Hope you can join us there. But look outside. It is finally springtime. The weather is warm. The birds are chirping. The flowers are blooming, which can all be a little hard to appreciate when all you can do is... As it turns out, you are not crazy. Allergy season is getting worse by the year. So what is going on, and why is a little tree pollen such an issue for our immune system to begin with? With us in Studio 3 to help us answer that is Richard Primack, a professor of plant ecology at Boston University, where he also leads the Primack Lab, conducting research in the world of conservation biology. And joining him, physician scientist, allergist Caroline Sokol. She leads the Sokol Laboratory at Massachusetts General Hospital, where she investigates all things allergies and immune system. Richard, Caroline, welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
So, right now, AccuWeather says the tree pollen forecast for today and the rest of the week is very high, and then extreme, 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 and then very high again. So, baseline, is this usual this time of year? Is this okay? Is this normal? Are we okay?
Well, I can start off by saying that pollen seasons are getting ever earlier as the climate continues to warm, that the pollen season is getting earlier and it's extending longer, and there's more pollen because with warmer temperatures and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, more nitrogen in the environment, plants are producing ever more pollen each year.
Okay, so coming earlier and getting larger in volume, both at the same time.
And also extending longer into the autumn. So in the past, pollen season would end in mid-September or late September. Now it's extending through October and sometimes even into early November.
Okay. What is pollen?
Pollen is the male dust produced by plants, particularly wind pollen. In this case, we're talking about wind-pollinated plants. It's the male dust, and the dust flies through the air and reaches the pistil of the female flowers of these plants, where it fertilizes them, and the resulting fertilization results in the plant being able to produce a seed. So it's the way of the plant undergoing sexual reproduction.
So in that regard, it's a good thing. Like, I mean, we need pollen, right? It has to. It has to happen. Yes?
We need pollen. Plants need pollen in order to be fertilized, in order to make seeds, to establish the next generation. The problem is that the plants are producing excessive amounts of pollen right now, more than they need for fertilization, and then it's starting to have impacts on people.
So surplus, we got a surplus pollen situation.
Too much pollen, that's right.
Okay, let's turn to the allergist. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
No, and what I was going to say is pollen sounds fantastic for a plant, but these are like bombs of noxious and irritating substances when they land on our nose and in our lungs, and all of that is really just hardwired to start up an allergic immune response.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Like, what is it about the pollen that wreaks havoc on our system, and why are so many people allergic to it?
Yeah, so this is something that we study actually in the lab. So if you look at pollens, they're jam-packed with different substances, and some of those substances are proteases. These are enzymes that break down proteins. And what we've actually found is that those enzymes actually activate our sensory neurons in our skin, in our nose. They just directly activate them, and then that actually leads to the initiation of an allergic immune response.
Okay. So can we talk a little bit about the difference between I'm a little bit irritated by pollen and I'm actually allergic to pollen? Is there like a line there? Like the average person who is not quote unquote allergic to pollen, if I go take a walk in the woods right now and we got the surplus of pollen that we're talking about, might I still sneeze or be like, oh, the pollen's bothering me? Or does it only bother me if my body goes, I'm allergic to it?
No, 100%. On a really high pollen day like we're having right now, when we have that surplus of pollen, that's enough to make everybody irritated, to make everybody sneeze.
So it doesn't mean I'm allergic. So if I'm just like, oh, the pollen count's high, I'm sneezing a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm allergic to pollen.
Not necessarily, but there are kind of tricks of the trade to find out if you are allergic. So
take us into them.
Yeah,
give us the tricks of the trade. That's what we're here for.
Well, the more miserable, usually, the better the sign. You know, one thing, of course, we think about sneezing. Of course, we think about your nose getting all stuffy, coughing, all that kind of stuff. But when you start seeing people that are really itchy, when their eyes are just swollen up, when they have a lot of these eyes and ear symptoms, that's usually a good sign that somebody's actually allergic to it.
Kind of an interesting kind of example is the fact that I'm allergic to oak pollen when oak trees are really flowering very prolifically. So they flower very actively about once every 5 years. And during those years, I get some symptoms in the spring. But I had a graduate student who was supposed to work with me on spring flowering time. And she was so allergic that she couldn't even go outside of her house during the spring.
Yeah.
And so she wound up working on fall flowering rather than spring flowering.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is just that everybody has a different threshold of reactivity, even if you are allergic. So if you're allergic, we expect that you're going to respond to way lower doses than somebody who's not allergic, obviously. But even people who are allergic can be super allergic or just a little allergic.
All right. So, what do I do? Like, is there something I ought to do to find out if I'm allergic to pollen or allergic to, allergic to a specific thing, right? It's hard to sort, through what exactly it is in the springtime that you might be reacting to, because there's more than just tree pollen out there, right?
Well, in my case, I actually
how did you work out that it's just the oak trees every 4 to 5 years?
Well, the contrast between myself and Caroline is that I'm a botanist, so I can recognize every plant species. I can look out your window here and I can identify every plant I'm looking at outside of your window. And when I walk out in the woods, I can recognize every plant. So I know exactly when every plant is flowering, when it's starting to flower, when it's at peak flowering.
So you're so tuned in.
I'm so tuned in. So I know exactly what is flowering. I can recognize the different grass species. I know what's flowering in the fall. And so I can tell. But I think that most people don't have that specific knowledge.
No, definitely. Most allergists don't have that specific knowledge.
So what do I do if I am having like a tough time in spring? Like, is it important? Should I go to an allergist and find out if it's something specific, or should I just go take some Zyrtec? You know what I mean?
Honestly, it's all about what your symptoms are like. For plenty of people, things are pretty mild and they can just go take a Zyrtec, or they can use a nasal steroid. All these things are over the counter. But for a lot of people, they keep adding on the medications, and they're just not getting anywhere, and they're still miserable. And for those people, for sure, you should find out what you're allergic to, because you don't even know if it's just the pollen. It could be a mix of the pollen and the dust mites and all this other stuff that you're exposed to.
Yeah.
But also, isn't the case that if you find out you're allergic to a certain plant, you can take some kind of treatment for that certain plant?
Oh my gosh, you're setting me up.
Let's go.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right. You're setting me up. Yeah, no, it's so we call it allergen immunotherapy or allergy shots, and that's kind of the old school way that we've been dealing with allergies for the past 100 years, where we basically take all the allergens that you're positive to, that you test positive to on skin testing. We mix it together in little vials, and we give you injections every week, starting out with a tiny amount so we don't cause a whole body allergic reaction, and then going up through about the course of about 6 months till we get to an effective dose that's going to teach your immune system not to react, instead to tolerate the allergens.
And that works.
It works, but
Okay.
it is a commitment. It's like 3 to 5 years. Yeah, you want to get some done?
So you've got to commit for 3 to 5 years to make that sort of therapy work. And and so you're talking about very gradual increase in exposure.
So it's really gradual over about the first 6 months. And then that gradual increase in dose is really just so we don't give you a whole body allergic reaction. We're trying to avoid anaphylaxis, okay? But then we keep you up at a really high dose. And the reason we keep you up at a high dose for a long time is that's what actually educates the immune system, or re-educates the immune system to actually not attack or not have these reactions, and then to tolerate the allergen. And it'll stick around for decades.
Yeah, wow. All right, you're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with BU ecologist Richard Primack and physician scientist Caroline Sokol about tree pollen and why it's so much worse now compared to years past. I just want to stay on the allergies thing for one more minute quickly. Developing allergies over time, like allergies that come and go. I hear a lot of people talk about this, especially when they're talking about sort of seasonal allergies, like allergies in the fall or spring. Does that happen? Can we develop an allergy to something later in life or a different stage in life, or have it just evaporate over time?
Yeah.
I can volunteer on that one.
Go for it, Richard.
Get in there, Richard.
So I'm a botanist, and it's a very common phenomenon that botanists become allergic to the plants they work with, because we keep working with plants over and over again. We get such a high dose of them. So I became very allergic to the plant that I worked on for my PhD, which is called the ribwort plantain. And so I became
classic. The classic ribwort plantain allergy.
That's right.
If I had $1 for every time I heard about that.
No, but it's an extremely common plant. It's actually it's probably the most common weed in the world. It's
cool.
Very, very common. It occurs throughout the world. And I became very allergic to it from working with it. But then after a few years, that allergy just wore off and I'm not allergic to it anymore.
Yeah. No, we see, when we have people that come in, they're allergic to one tree at the beginning of the season. Every season they pick up additional trees. So it's really this growing kind of thing.
What is going on with the body?
You know what? We call it allergen creep. And what we think is happening is that basically the sensory nervous system and immune interactions that drive allergies, that they get really kind of ramped up, that they get metabolically more active just from being exposed to an allergen, which boosts their response to the next allergen that comes around.
Richard, how is the pollen this week? You're out there in nature, I assume, most days. How is it out there, and what can we anticipate in the next couple days?
Well, I think that the pollen which is out there right now is birch pollen and also alder pollen. So these are early spring flowering trees. They have catkins on them, these kind of dangling reproductive structures, and they've all just become active over the last couple of days or week. And so we just have this burst of birch and alder pollen right now. Probably in the next week or so, we're going to start having oak pollen. And then from there, it's on a variety of other things.
Do you know, like when we see like AccuWeather or whatever, it says like the pollen count, or we're watching the local news and we get the pollen count's going to be extreme. Like how are we counting? Who's counting the pollen and how do we get that count?
Well, those pollen counts are generally done by state laboratories around the United States. And they're done by having small little machines, often on the rooftops of buildings, and either they have glass slides in them, or sometimes they have whirling glass rods on them that are covered with grease. And so these slides or whirling glass rods, they pick up pollen in the air, and then afterwards technicians take these rods and they put them under a microscope. They stain them with special stain to make the pollen grains stand out, and they count the number of pollen grains, and they also identify which pollen species are on the sample.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and it's one measure of pollen, but those general pollens you see on TV or on a website, they give you a general sense of what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's really often pollen is very localized. If you happen to have a couple of oak trees near your house, you're going to get a big dose of pollen, and if you live far away from oak trees, you're probably going to get less of it. So that's really the local situation that you're exposed to.
Yeah. So when we look at the fact, sort of circling back to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is that we have, a pollen season, which is now extending in both directions, earlier and later. We have a surplus of pollen being produced by many of our plants. How do you, in the world of allergies, and how are you seeing the impact of that extension of the season and the extension of just the sheer volume of pollen out there? Do you see an impact in the world of folks having allergies? Do you see more patients? Do you see people having worse symptoms?
I mean, people are just feeling more miserable and more miserable.
Really?
And it's starting earlier. Richard and I were talking about, I used to tell people, okay, if you start your allergy meds on St. Patrick's Day, you'll be good. And now that just seems to be a little bit too late for some people. So because we really need to think about treating it before it starts. And so I'm seeing more people coming into my office looking for allergy shots because, again, the Zyrtec over the counter or whatever, that's just not doing it for them anymore.
And then the other thing I wonder about, if we're talking about, the idea that, climate change is sort of changing the length of the season, et cetera, we also know all over the country, it's changing the makeup of the plants and that are in any given region that are surviving or thriving. And so does that the idea that there maybe are plants here in this area that there are more of than ever could have survived, say, 20 years ago, does that have an impact in terms of allergies, which is to say it's something new that people are exposed to or anything like that?
I would say we're not having any really new species right now. I think the climate change is eventually going to change the vegetation and the species composition around the United States, but that's not the major
really
factor.
Happening, yeah.
The main factors we're seeing now is just, ragweed plants are bigger now than they were before. They're much more active in the kind of throughout the fall than they were in the past. So that's really the big change which is occurring. And I know that probably allergy lovers or
Allergy lovers.
Allergy
lovers out
sufferers. Sorry, allergy sufferers are probably, they're probably waiting for the first frost in September or October because that will end the allergy season for them.
And then all the fall allergy people are like, no, not now.
My wife and I are the opposite extreme because we really love tomatoes in our garden, and so we're always kind of hoping that the frost really gets delayed because then we can keep harvesting tomatoes from our garden.
I mean, tomatoes are great. Sneezing is bad.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with Richard Primack, a professor of plant ecology at Boston University, and physician scientist Caroline Sokol. Thank you both for illuminating us on this issue of allergies and pollen on this high-risk pollen day.
Thank you.
And we are now joined by allergy-free Jared Bowen. Are you an allergy?
I don't always sound like this. I didn't take up smoking. I mean, this is the worst allergy season.
So we had a YouTube poll. Is pollen season feeling worse for you this year? We got 60% said, oh, for sure. You haven't.
I never even had allergies until a couple of years ago. And then all of a sudden, boom, I've had it. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. All right. Well, in better news, what do you have on the Culture Show today?
Really good news. We have Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, he's got a new film, so we're going to be talking. He's transitioned from straight up comedy into action comedy.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about how it actually saved his life for a man who had a massive heart attack a couple of years ago.
Wow, okay.
He's joined by John Wick creator Derek Kolstad. They've worked on this series together, so we'll have them on the show, and then an exhibition over at Harvard. It's called Thanks for Typing. And if you look at the work of Emily Dickinson, Henry James, T.S. Eliot, they all had women typists behind them.
Oh.
But they weren't simply typists. These were women who collaborated with these authors and ultimately came to have a creative fruition in these works. We'll talk about
fascinating.
that.
That's really cool.
It's a very interesting story. And then Say It Loud, an exhibition at the Institute of Contemporary Art about the African-American Master Artists in Residence program. Took place in the 1970s, golden age in the 1980s, but when museums weren't necessarily embracing Black artists, they did it themselves. And so the incredible work they depicted at that time is now on view at the ICA.
Sounds like another great show. That is the Culture Show with Jared Bowen, coming your way in just under 2 minutes, so you're not going to want to go anywhere. As for us, that's about it for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Lawson, Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is our box of Zyrtec. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Special thanks today to Andrew Massawa and Bradley Lewis. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. If you can't wait that long, you can check out our podcast edition of the show. That, not surprisingly, is available wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III, and I hope you will stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And My Grandmas of New England. Handcrafted coffee cakes baked locally in Boston and available for corporate gift giving in 12 varieties. Delivered with a personalized company logo. Online ordering at mygrandma.com. How did the powerful British Empire lose the war against a ragtag band of rebels? And how did the fight for freedom reshape Britain? Lucy Worsley investigates the American Revolution tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, actor Bob Odenkirk and John Wick creator Derek Kolstad. After making the Nobody action films together, the darkly comic thrillers that turned Odenkirk from suburban everyman into a ferocious action star, they're back with Normal. It's a twisted neo-western where a bank robbery blows a small town's veneer clean apart. They join us as Normal hits theaters this week. From there, it's Keystrokes of Genius, how women typists helped shape the works of writers like Henry James, T.S. Eliot, and Emily Dickinson, and why Harvard's Houghton Library is finally putting that hidden labor and their own sizable literary influence at the center of the story. And at a time when Boston's major museums gave black artists little support, artists built a cultural home of their own. Now, the Say It Loud exhibition at the ICA traces nearly 50 years of art, activism, and community in one of Boston's most important artistic institutions. We take a look at the legacy of the African American Master Artists in Residence program. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The new film Normal is set in the fictional Normal, Minnesota, a place where time slows down, where there's a friendly face on every corner and in every shop, from the knitting one to the hardware store, and where there's even a majestic town moose.
Life in Normal is quiet, peaceful, predictable. Until it isn't.
Why are they shooting at you?
I'm at a loss.
Normal stars Bob Odenkirk as interim Sheriff Ulysses, brought in, as he describes, to just be the midwife with a gun overseeing a ho-hum transition until the new sheriff is elected. But then a bank robbery goes sideways, and he's drawn into both a manhunt and the town's deranged underpinnings.
Whoa, 16.8 million. Where the hell did this town get that kind of money?
Community really came together on that one.
Yeah, I would say. Is that a police scanner you got? You keeping tabs on me?
Yes, sir.
This is a hell of an armory.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, it's my one trick.
What do you think of our little town?
It's, charming.
Normal is the latest collaboration from Bob Odenkirk and screenwriter Derek Kolstad, who also created the John Wick franchise. They previously teamed up on Nobody and Nobody 2, films that showcased Odenkirk as an action star. And their combined creative DNA runs through this darkly comic neo-western. Normal is in theaters April 17th. Joining me to talk about it all are Bob Odenkirk and Derek Kolstad. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you both here.
Thank you for having us. It's fun to hear those little clips from the movie.
That's awesome. What does it take you back to? You were so physical in this film as an action star.
Yeah, well, it's fun to do the action scenes. I started on Nobody, a film that Derek wrote, and I trained for 2 years for that, maybe 2.5 years. And I was very surprised at how much fun I had doing the action scenes. And the training for them is not as fun. Yeah. But it's at least interesting. And a lot of exercise to me is boring.
Well, what makes it interesting? Because
because when you exercise, if anybody does that, you tend to get into repetitive cycles of the same thing over and over, whether you're doing cardio or whatever it is. But when you're training for action, there's a great deal more variety. And then, of course, at some point it includes choreography. And so when you get into choreography, now you got to pay attention, because you'll get hit or you'll hit somebody else if you're not paying attention and doing it in the right order, doing the right moves. And, of course, a lot of our moves, either you're missing when you take a swing or you're sort of softly hitting. And so you're engaging your brain for the whole thing. And that just makes your workout way more involving, to the point where you finish the workout and you sort of have gone away on a little mental vacation. Instead of being distracted and bored, which a lot of exercise is, to me. And that's why they have the TV sets up at all your gyms, because what else are you doing with your brain?
Yeah, it can be very repetitive. Well, Derek, how do you think of this man sitting next to you and this transformation he's made into action star? As you came together to create the story, you wrote the story, but as you've seen him in this role.
Well, I mean, it's a delight because when we first met in regards to Normal, we just clicked. You know, I love action movies. I love genre, thriller, sci-fi, horror. And Bob comes from comedy and drama, and it wasn't oil and water. It was ingredients that we each throw at everything we do together to just make it better. Because, you know, we look at story and character as, do I like this guy or gal? Do I like this world? Do I want to see more? And in everything we do, even when you look at the potential of a franchise on everything, it's the cowboy riding off in the sunset. But he's going to ride to the next town and do the same thing again. And yet his character journey is never at an end. And we understood this, we comp these things, and it's just a joy.
Well, how did you see Normal Minnesota, especially in this day and age? What seems like the town we all love to talk about, everyone knows each other, it's quiet, it's lovely, but...
Well, I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, which, you know, is one of the larger cities in the state. But my grandfather, John Wick, lived out in Mazomanie with the Wick family, and my grandpa and grandma Kolstad lived up in Wisconsin Rapids, and everything about those places were, you know, you'd go to the main street, it's Rust Belt territory, but there's always that one store that's open and doing quite well, and you're like, what are they really selling? It's got to be more than scented candles. And that's the same kind of background that Bob came from as well.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago. I'm from Naperville, and Normal is actually a name of a town in Illinois, and it was not the original title for Derek's film. But when I said, why don't we call it Normal, because there is a town, we both know of it, and of course the mislead of it all, but also the audience is immediately in on that just from the poster. They know, like, well, something's gone wrong in Normal, something's up, and so. We do know these kinds of towns. And also the story at the core of it, as you learn, is the town talks. There's a monologue that Henry Winkler has, and he talks about the struggle of small towns in America of the last, I want to say, 50 years, as factories leave. And in the case of farm towns, there's conglomerate farms instead of single farmer families. And so people leave the town and stores shut down, and life's hard.
Well, this speaks to something you can both address then from where you came from, the Minnesota nice or Midwestern nice, especially when the life around you, as you were just pointing out, isn't that nice anymore in the Rust Belt.
Well, again, the word normal is very operative in a million ways in this film. You know, Ulysses, the character I'm playing, is desperately trying to believe in normalcy and restrain his own sense of something going wrong. The people are behaving normally in a forceful way. And then there comes a point in the script where everyone agrees that we have to put on this facade of normalcy yet again. So it's very at the core of it. And we were just talking to some young journalists about how the theme of normalcy plays in this film, and the thought of, we all do put on a show of normalcy. You can't walk around shouting your challenges and problems, and we want to live in a world that's calm and has guardrails and normalcy to it. But the bottom line is, when things get out of hand, you've got to also admit that. Yeah. When you can't fake it, you have to speak up. And in the case of this town, there's kind of an enforced normalcy.
Speaking about Normal, the new film opening on April 17th, it stars Bob Odenkirk, and the screenplay is by Derek Kolstad. Derek, as the normalcy pretty much ends, did you have limits to the dementedness? I mean, some of what happens here is just so wonderfully, deliciously outrageous, but what were the guidelines you set for yourself in terms of what you could do? Well,
the reason that Bob shares story by credit is that I had a treatment, and then we blew up the first act, and then really brought the characters to play. It's hard when you do an ensemble like this to make sure that everyone stays in focus. But I'm a big fan of the Final Destination movies, you know, like I said, the horror. And Ben Wheatley comes from this kind of schooling as well.
He's your director.
Yes, and he's an absolute delight and a joy. And we would talk through, like in the script, there would be one kind of kill, because I like the idea that you plant a seed to bring to creative harvest. Like you see something and you're like, why did the camera linger on that for 1.5 seconds? And then you see what happens. You're like, oh yeah. But we wanted to just have fun with this thing. And even with the Yakuza opening, that wasn't in the original script. It was Bob's idea. And ultimately it puts into place a filter to watch the movie. And it tells you we're here to have fun, you know?
I mean, look, I don't come from action or horror. I come from sketch comedy. But this has been an incredible journey into this world. But I respect Derek Kolstad and Ben Wheatley, who do come from action filmmaking and horror filmmaking as well. They both enjoy those genres. And I just think what I love about some of the violence in this movie, Normal, is it is so nuts that you have to laugh. There's no other way. There's no other place to put your feelings except to have a laugh at it. So I think it is in Derek's script and also in Ben's conception of that script and in their shared conversation that they've invented some of the kills. And Ben always likes to point out in the movie Normal, and this is, what is that film you guys keep referencing?
Bad Day at Black Rock?
No, the horror film.
Oh, Final Destination.
Final Destination. Is that, I guess, and as you'll see if you come see the movie Normal, is there are deaths in it that have nothing to do with the fighting that's going on. Just sort of accidental.
Well, you are kind of a veteran now, though. You said you're new to this world, but this is at least the third.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, I'm more comfortable doing the choreographing and actually doing the fighting. I have a better sense of what I can do. There are limitations. I'm not going to do any high kicking, which some of the action guys can do amazing gymnastic things. I don't do that. I do kind of bludgeony, multiple punches to the face fighting. I do love it. It's really fun. And I love inventing moments. And in the movie Normal, there's two fights in particular that are me and one other guy going at it, the hardware store and the kitchen fight. And those are great fun to do. And I'll just tell you this, after the director says cut every time, we all laugh. We all break out in laughter and joy. I know that sounds crazy because they're bloody fights, but it's just, it's a trick of film. And you pulled it off, and it's a great hoot to pull it off.
So no stray fists, nothing.
Well,
have you been hurt?
So yeah, the way you get hurt is exactly what you just said, stray fists. That's the way I get hurt. And it's not because I get punched, because the stunt people are the best in the world. Although I will say the actor who fights me in the kitchen scene is named Peter Shinkota. He's from Vancouver, and he does a wonderful job in there. And he's not a stunt guy, I don't think. He does some stunts, but he's not a pure stunt guy. And they protect you. They don't get hurt, and they keep you from getting hurt. But I get hurt when my hands hit. When you go to the actual set, it's not the same dimensions as the training gym. Inevitably, it's different. There's things in the way that you didn't predict. And I always hit my hands or my shoulder or whatever, and I get cut up. But these are minor things, and I'm fine with that. And the interesting thing is when I've gotten hurt on a set, it's never been in an action sequence.
Derek, let me ask about, because of course you did John Wick, and we see Keanu Reeves, and we've seen Liam Neeson and Uma Thurman, Gina Davis, people who were never considered action stars. What does it do for an audience? What does it do for you as the writer and this conceiving these stories or co-conceiving to have somebody in that role that audiences don't necessarily expect?
Well, I mean, the most important thing is Bob had a willingness to do the training and to do as many of the stunts as the insurance would allow, because we all know that when you watch a movie and the camera's behind an actor's head, it ain't him or her, and I just find it interesting. I remember I bring up Long Kiss Goodnight all the time, or even if you look at Liam Neeson in The First Take and you're like, Schindler? Like, what's going on here? It's the kind of thing that we always joke that if Brad Pitt starred in Nobody, you'd feel like, oh, I have to go see that. But because it's Bob, you're like, oh, I want to see that, And I think there's a unique yet familiar notion of taking a great actor who's known for something else and doing this like in such a way that you just surprise the audience and they just have big grins,
And you just mentioned Bad Day at Black Rock. Spencer Tracy was foundational for you too?
Yeah, I grew up child of the 80s, so my mom would always find old Beta and VHS in the grocery store for 99 cents in that bin. And so I grew up with, my favorite actor as a kid was James Cagney, And so, Spencer Tracy from Bad Day at Black Rock, we talk about Stepford Wives, we talk about Hot Fuzz, talk about Rio Bravo, and a lot of the Clint Eastwood movies as well, Wild Bunch, going back to our love of those things and you look at those movies, for the most part, that's that guy falling off the horse, and that's what we want to do here.
Well, Bob, I think I read an interview where you said that your wife wasn't necessarily on board with this.
She's not at all a fan of action films. She's becoming a fan, it seems to me. No, I said I trained for 2.5 years, and in LA, the training gym is actually pretty far away. They've got one near me now, but they had the stunt gym. Was traffic in LA is as bad as it is in Boston.
Yeah.
Okay? And I would walk out that door twice a week, and then eventually 3 times a week, and then eventually 5 times a week to go to the gym with the long drive and the 2-hour gym and then the long drive back. And we still had some kids at home who needed somebody to drive them around. I'd walk out that door and she'd just look at me like, the hell, midlife crisis. Thanks for bringing this midlife crisis into our home. You're going to be an action star. Get out of here. But she tolerated it. And now she likes these films. Yeah.
What does she like about them?
Well, first of all, I think Derek surprised her with some actual characters to play. I mean, a lot of action films are get to the action and stay in the action, and that's it. And I one of the reasons I loved the movie Normal, the script, was it had this chapter at the start that was suspense and mystery and comedy. So she sees that that's what we've done with these films, is we have built characters and we have built real-world tensions. They eventually become action films. They transform into conceptualized behavior and characters that are just a joy and a thing you can only see in your movie theater. You can't see it in the real world because it can't happen. And that's one reason you go to the movies. And but she saw that we took the time and care to write plot and story and tensions that were relatable. In the opening of Nobody, the family is really filled with anxiety and tension. The teenage son is not, is pushing away, and the wife and the husband have not spent enough time together, and they're kind of on the outs, or at least they're distant from each other. It's, I hope and I think, very relatable. And so we did that again with Normal. Different tensions, different scenario, but we took the time to do that, and I think that's why she's liking the work that we're doing here.
You also have acknowledged that this work, and with Nobody 2, also probably saved you to some degree for the massive heart attack.
It definitely did. Yeah, it did. Unquestionably. I had a heart incident attack. One of my tributaries to the Widowmaker artery shut down. The plaque broke off, and I was out completely, turning gray, and all that good stuff. The picture is ugly, I promise you. It's been painted by many people who were standing around me when it happened. And after about 15 minutes, they found an AED, and they had been doing CPR. And later, And in fact, I just was in for my 5-year checkup. I went in a half year early for that. And the doctor said, your heart had, for 25 minutes, didn't have full, blood. And you should have I guess your heart is in 3 parts. And he said in this third should be scarred up really badly. And I just had another test, full EKG and everything. So they saw pictures of my heart, and there's no scarring. And that's because these other veins to the heart were enlarged from training as hard as I did for 2 years. And so when they did CPR, my heart was still getting a lot of blood and didn't immediately start to scar up, which is what happens in the situation I went through. After 25 minutes, should have lots of gray scarring on the test.
So this is a time for you, a new professional life, and a new
it's another chapter, and it is But look, we all want to be in shape, and as you get older and your metabolism slows, you want to amp it up any way you can. I wish there was for people an action stunt training, regimen. You need a partner for it. In fact, if you're listening and you want anything like it, a boxing workout will get you part of the way there. Because boxing, of course, you're learning punches and repetitions and things, and you're engaging your brain if you're working with another person.
Well, we love ending with a public service announcement.
That's
fantastic.
Hey, I'm all for it. If this thing that happened to me, if I can help other people either recover from it or avoid it, that would be awesome.
It's pretty extraordinary. Well, congratulations on the film. I loved it. I laughed a lot and really appreciated it. You guys are delightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Man.
Normal is coming up. The women who typed manuscripts for Henry James, Emily Dickinson, and more, and the untold story of how they did much more than transcribe. They helped shape stories themselves. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
When you're getting ready for the day, get ready with us.
Welcome to GBH's Morning Edition. Thanks for having us with you.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hers.
Looking at local headlines this morning.
More local news. More diverse voices. More unique perspectives.
The gateway cities closer to Boston have seen a lot of investment. Others, particularly further west, haven't gotten that same level of investment.
GBH's Morning Edition. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Chevalier Theatre, presenting Melissa Etheridge, coming to Medford on April 15th. Known for songs like Come to My Window and I'm the Only One, Etheridge brings an evening of rock and storytelling to the stage. Ticket info at chevaliertheatre.com. And Framingham State University, where students learn to examine evidence and challenge assumptions. In a world of noise, truth takes discipline. Framingham State University. Live to the truth. Learn more at framingham.edu. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Edmonia Lewis, Said in Stone, a retrospective of the 19th century Black woman sculptor. More at pem.org.
Trusted reporting is here for you every day on GBH Radio, and the best way to support it is by becoming a GBH sustainer. Sustainers make small monthly contributions that make a big difference. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. When the typewriter arrived in the late 19th century, it created new work for women, including assignments that became central to literary and artistic production. For decades, women sat at the typewriter, taking dictations, sorting through revisions, and in many cases, proving indispensable to the making of the work itself, sometimes shaping how a Henry James novel developed or how Emily Dickinson's poems were brought into print. And while author names were emblazoned on the title page, theirs were not. A new exhibition called Thanks for Typing at Harvard University's Houghton Library brings that hidden history into view across literature, theater, film, and dance. The show uses drafts, scripts, and retyped pages to show how pivotal these women could be in realizing the finished version of major literary works. The exhibition is on view through May 1st. Admission is free. Christine Jacobson, Associate Curator of Modern Books and Manuscripts at Houghton Library and co-curator of the exhibition, joins us to talk about it all. Thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure.
I have to say, as you were walking into the studio, I was telling you that I have covered so many stories over the years, and this is one I am fascinated by because I knew nothing about it, which is a joy of your work to bring these stories to the fore. I don't even know where to begin, but in a general sense, how do you describe the importance of these women?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. I think, I'm someone who's always been really interested in process and finding out who are the people working behind the scenes. And so I think what typists represent is looking for the people behind the lone genius who's created the great work of art.
Is that air quotes, lone genius?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Henry James, and Henry James is a genius. I think it's really important to recognize that sometimes great works are the result of many skilled hands.
Well, I think that Henry James, let's start there with Henry James and what you know of his collaboration with a woman who came, it seemed to be, a very reliable partner and sounding board for him.
Yeah, Henry James was actually lucky to have two very important typists that come along in a very important part of his career. In 1892, he gets a really painful rheumatism in his right wrist. He writes to a friend, "All writing is the crazy pain you see proof of. I shall soon take to dictating to a typist." He first finds one in Mary Weld, who is a young typist right out of stenography school. And she will embark with him on three of his greatest novels that sort of represent the late James period, The Golden Bowl, The Wings of the Dove, and The Ambassadors. And some biographers have been really dismissive of her, saying, she would knit while Henry James was thinking. So maybe she didn't understand what a genius or what a master Henry James was. But in fact, at Houghton, we found a manuscript in her papers that she left where she describes the experience of working for the master and how she understood that for James, there wasn't a word, a comma that didn't have just the right place in the picture he was painting. And so I think what you have is a woman who keenly understood Henry James's style, which, for listeners who may not know, the late James style is sort of characterized by very long, complex sentences with complex syntax. And I think that work would have been very difficult with a rheumatic wrist. When he switches to dictation, he is suddenly liberated to unspool these long sentences verbally. And she was skilled enough to render them quickly and accurately. And when they finished The Golden Bowl, he inscribed a copy to her as from your collaborator.
Well, how do we interpret that collaborator, and not just in the sense that she is so accurately recording everything, but maybe more than that?
Yeah, in Mary's case, I would say that she had a keen understanding of his project and his aims, but I wouldn't say that we have evidence that she contributed more than her very skilled typing, which I think should not be taken for granted. But I think he had maybe more of a collaborator in his second amanuensis, a woman named Theodora Bosanquet, who he embarks on what I consider to be one of the most ambitious literary projects of the 20th century, which is the New York editions, which is when he decides to go back and rewrite his early novels and short stories. And he does this with Theodora's help, and together the two devise a system for keeping track of the changes he's making. we have the expanded typescript for Portrait of a Lady, which happens to be my favorite novel, and it's really fun to look at. Theodora has to, when he expands a scene, there's one scene that he expands from 1 page to 7 pages, and it's the one that's on display. She has to devise a system where it goes from page 496 to 496A, 496B, and so on, so that the publisher knows how much bigger the book is going to be. But also, she's writing on a Remington 8 typewriter, and he comes to so rely on the melody, the sort of rhythm of her specific typing skills on that specific machine, that when it breaks down and it's in the repair shop for a week and she borrows another typewriter, he can't write. That's how, integral to his writing process she and the machine had become.
And he is just one of many authors that you cover in this exhibition. Where did you find that there may have been perhaps editorial collaboration?
Yeah, I think in our 2 typists for poets, Emily Dickinson and T.S. Eliot, I think the Emily Dickinson story is so fun. I'm really excited for people who come to the show to learn more about Mabel Loomis Todd. This is a woman who was euphemistically described as a friend of the Dickinson family, but who Emily Dickinson fans will know was having an affair with their brother Austin.
It's been well documented in books of its own, yes.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. So Emily famously only published a few poems in her lifetime. After she dies, her sister finds hundreds of unpublished manuscript poems, and she hands them over to Mabel Loomis Todd, who will spend the next 9 years of her life transcribing them, first by hand, then on the typewriter, editing them, and preparing them for publication. And the first complete edition, or the first collection of poetry comes out in 1890. But Mabel is making a ton of editorial decisions. How do you render Emily Dickinson's strange, idiosyncratic poetry in print? And so Mabel is taking license with word choice, punctuation, and significantly, in the case of the typewriter, punctuation. Emily famously used very strange punctuation choices. Mabel, when she finally gets access to a typewriter, has access to something called the World typewriter, which is an early model that could only type in all caps. So here comes this machine that is helping her do her work more quickly and efficiently, preparing clean transcripts that a publisher can review. But it's also eviscerating Emily's original pronunciation choices. And so we lose some of that once it goes into print because of the typewriter's role. And so I think it adds a really interesting wrinkle into the history of Emily's poetry.
For people just tuning in, I'm speaking with Christine Jacobson, Associate Curator of Modern Books and Manuscripts at Houghton Library. We're talking about their exhibition, Thanks for Typing, on view through May 1st. Admission is always free there. It's interesting that you bring up Mabel Loomis Todd, this, however you look at her very close proximity to the Dickinson family, because you also look at other people who were close family members, like Vera Nabokov and Vladimir's wife, who knew her husband's sensibilities very well. These are people who are partners in art and in marriage and life. What role did she come to play in his works?
I like to say, what didn't Vera do? Nabokov, novelist, poet, translator, lepidopterist, chess master, knew many languages, but he could never do 2 things, drive or type. And Vera did these for him. So Vera was his first reader of everything he ever wrote their entire lives, and she prepared all of his manuscripts for publication. I think some people who have read biographies of her or of Vladimir will already know that, but one of the fun things we were able to uncover from our Nabokov family archive at Houghton Library is the work she would do for his lectures. Nabokov took jobs at Wellesley and Cornell when the family wasn't making that much money from his novels yet. And he never wanted to take those jobs because he didn't want to be teaching. He wanted to be writing. But Vera would say, no, we need the money. Just take the job. I'll prepare the lectures. And in fact, Vera not only prepared lectures, which we have some of her lecture notes for Dr. Zhivago for a lecture he gave. She often gave the lectures. If you talk to students who had him in class, they remember she was always sitting in the corner and that Vladimir often called out sick and had Vera deliver them for him.
I mean, it's such a wealth of material that you have to draw from these stories. I, like you, am so fascinated by process. How revelatory is it when you pull out these archives? And who knew that? I mean, I certainly didn't know the extent of the archives you have, all of the papers of all these extraordinary people. What is it to have an understanding, as you see it on the page, what this collaboration was like, that it was beyond mere recording?
Well, I want to say two things. You know, one, and I should mention before we go any further, my wonderful co-curator, Dale Stinchcomb, who was a colleague of mine at Houghton Library and is now at the Morgan. You know, we're both fascinated by process, and we really had two goals for the exhibition. One was to see what we could find in the stacks at Houghton Library, what new stories or pieces of evidence could we show, but also we wanted to highlight the work of other scholars. So some of the stories and evidence I'm bringing to you today is the very diligent and conscientious work of scholars, and we're just looking to give it a bigger platform. But yeah, finding Vera's notes for the lecture on Dr. Zhivago is really thrilling. You know, she wrote in pencil at the top of the manuscript by VEN for VN. So sort of like putting her sort of own attribution at the top of it. And, you know, it's one thing to know intellectually that the two worked really closely together and that she had a huge impact on his work. And the same is true for T.S. Eliot and his two wives that we feature. But it's Philip Larkin talks about the sheer visceral thrill of holding a manuscript in your hands. There's something really incredible about seeing the evidence in a folder in 2 feet underground.
I want to ask you, too, about a typewriter to record dance, which I became aware of this years ago. There's a piece in the Boston Public Library. I can't remember which king it is, but there's a French king from centuries ago where the dance was recorded, and then the artist, the contemporary artist, still very much working today, Jean-Michel Autenel, took that as an inspiration while he had an artist residency at the Gardner to create these sculptures based on how he saw dance recorded on these manuscripts. But that's handwritten recording. You have evidence or reveal how a typewriter was developed to record choreography.
Yes, thank you for asking about this. So I should say Houghton Library is home to many systems of dance notation. It's one of our strengths. Dance, a notoriously ephemeral and difficult art form to record before you have the advent of video recording. And what's really interesting, and I wish Dale were here because he would be able to explain it more authoritatively than I could, is that the IBM Selectric comes online in the 1970s with a really important addition, the typewriter ball, right? And so, you know, for younger listeners, this was a typewriter ball that had fonts. So you could switch out the ball and type in different fonts and different font sizes, which is really important. And the Dance Notation Bureau, which was this organization that had been notating dance choreography for years in the United States for ballet companies like the New York City Ballet, had been doing their dance notation by hand. And when they saw the IBM Selectric come online with this typewriter ball, they asked if they could produce a typewriter ball that had their symbols, it's called labonotation, their labonotation symbols on the ball to enable them to type their scores. And IBM is thrilled, and they do a beautiful glossy campaign, and they call the IBM Selectric the dance typewriter. And unfortunately, it's a huge flop. Oh. We have this great score of a Jerome Robbins dance called Interplay, where it's clearly been typewritten, but it's not sufficient enough. It can't capture the full range of motions and moves on stage, and so somebody has still had to go back and handwrite many, 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 many notes, and so they abandoned it after a few years.
Well, I have to say, even seeing images of that manuscript I was just discussing from centuries ago, I still didn't understand how you could really record dance but by hand on a piece of paper without visually having that representation, which of course they couldn't hundreds of years ago. Christine Jacobson, thank you so much for being here. This is a fascinating show. We barely scratched the surface, which means people have to go visit.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much for having me.
Christine Jacobson is Associate Curator of Modern Books and Manuscripts at Houghton Library. Their exhibition, Thanks for Typing, is on view through May 1st. To learn more, check out their website. And as always, exhibitions at the Houghton Library are free and open to the public. Coming up, how in the 1970s, Black artists in Boston built their own cultural home, ultimately creating a golden age of Black art that would spread into the 1980s and beyond. A new exhibition at the ICA tells that story. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
One of Colombia's newest senators ran a campaign that was far from traditional. He dressed up in a white elephant costume and posted videos online talking about social issues in an AI-generated voice.
Estamos a un mes de llevar al elefantico hasta el Senado.
In this video, the elephant explains to viewers how to vote. That story and the day's top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Vivo Performing Arts, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, returning to Boston for its annual engagement at the Bach Center Wang Theater, April 30th through May 3rd. Tickets at vivoperformingarts.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and Furniture Consignment Gallery.
We sell very high-end, pre-owned, name-brand furniture.
Jay Frucci, owner.
One of the big reasons why we went with GBH was because of the reach. Having 4 locations all across Massachusetts, we wanted, when our message got out there, to make sure that we were hitting people all across the state and even into New Hampshire.
To learn how GBH can benefit your business, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
Stream, read, watch. However you engage with your world, the new GBH News app brings you trusted local news wherever you go. Download it today on the App Store and Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. In the late 1970s, Black artists in Boston were not finding widespread support from the city's major museums. So artist and activist Dana Chandler Jr. helped create a place of their own. What followed was more than an artist's residency. The African American Master Artists in Residence Program, or AMARP, became a cultural home, a gathering place, and a gallery that helped shape Boston's artistic life for nearly 50 years. That history is now the subject of the ICA exhibition, Say It Loud, AMARP 1977 to Now. And joining me now is artist Brian McFarlane, who is featured in the museum exhibition, and ICA curatorial assistant Megan Claire Considine. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Jared.
Well, Brian, let me start with you. In a time in which a lot of Black artists were not being featured prominently and not so much in museum walls, although to some extent in the ICA, as we'll talk about, then and now, how did you find this became an incubator for Black artists, including yourself, in the 1970s and 1980s when you came into the picture?
Yes, I came during the 80s, and I was very excited about just being in my studio working. I had not come hoping to get too much shows or exhibition necessarily. I had just come as a student, a master's degree student, and that kind of kept me occupied. Just getting used to the culture itself was an amazing experience for me.
If I could just ask, what was the culture you found? Because if people visit the ICA, they'll see all manner of art that was created in this time period, and it seems so much, even by looking at paintings on the wall, that there was a great energy there, a community, a collaboration there.
Yes, well, that culturally, in the sense of being youthful and coming from Jamaica, where I was just for me it was a shock to see so many variety of artists working in a university situation with very large studios, and so to that extent there was a difference, and there was some sort of cultural difference for me. As a black artist, I had my own mind, at the same time very independent in my thinking, and felt largely that this would be an addition to my learning by being among other black artists. That in itself was a great experience, just being with a community of artists who looked like myself and so on. That was great. I mean, I'd come from a culture from Jamaica with where most of the artists are black. So that wasn't so much but still, I felt the proportion of white and seeing, going around Boston, seeing the works of many of the artists who were also white, and then being in the environment where I was at Northeastern with that black art group. That itself was a kind of cultural shock to see so many artists just together who looked the same.
Well, Megan, let me bring you in here, and along with curator Jeffrey Dubois, when you worked on this show and you looked at this output from this nearly 50 years, and it continues still, what did you find in what was produced in that time?
Thanks so much for that question. I was thinking about it and speaking about it with Brian right before we came in. When something unique about the African American Master Artists in Residence program, both in its founding in the late 1970s and into the present, is what founder Dana C. Chandler Jr. Described in the founding documents as a commitment to the diversity of aesthetics and approaches to the art of Africa and its diasporas. So unlike many other models of working collectively, we can picture perhaps like a collective of photographers, a collective of poets. AMARP from its inception has been devoted to what is called a diversity of aesthetic approaches, which means that you have an amazing figurative painter like Brian hand in hand with abstract painters like Ellen Banks, landscape painters like Marcia Lloyd. Brian was actually Marcia Lloyd's student. Textile artists like Susan Thompson and Teresa India Young. So what you're describing as a sense of dynamism really, I think, speaks to these, a commitment to a multivalent approach to art making. And when you go to AMARP today at 76 Atherton Street in Jamaica Plain, artwork from these past 5 decades are hung really kind of cheek to jowl, as my colleague Jeffrey described it, and is a ethos that we tried to maintain in the exhibition space.
Well, and let me make a very basic observation. I toured this with Jeffrey. The art is astounding.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal piece, and Brian, we'll talk about yours in a moment, but phenomenal piece after phenomenal piece, photography included as well. You mentioned that it's landscape painting, it's portraiture, it's sculpture, the photography, which is staggering.
Yeah, Rudolph Robinson, Hakeem Rakib, Don West, an incredible lineage of AMARP photographers.
Jackson.
Yes, Reginald Jackson, of course, current executive director.
So it's one thing to have all of these artists come together. It's another to produce such phenomenal work.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I mean, what's your take? You're the curator here. So what did you, as you were sifting through these archives, it must have been also incredibly difficult to choose what would be in the ICA show, to have to choose among them.
Absolutely. Thank you for your kind words. It's true that the artists who have long been affiliated with AMARP are exceptional. And frankly, we were able to show only a fraction of them in the AMARP exhibition. 39 artists, 60 artworks, but that's just a fraction of the many artists and lives and community members who have been affiliated, who have exhibited there, who have passed through at different moments in the journey. We organized the exhibition and the works in it in very close dialogue with the artists, in close dialogue with the executive committee members, current executive director Reginald L. Jackson, and then during Dana C. Chandler Jr.'s lifetime, him as well. He had a close relationship with the curator, Jeff DeBlois. He sadly passed away in June 2025 and was unable to see that exhibition come to fruition, but we're very, very proud that the city of Boston actually named last Tuesday, April 7th, 2026, Dana C. Chandler Jr. Day and AMARP Day. And the new director of arts and culture in the city, Joseph Zeal Henry, is very committed to AMARP and the group of artists. And he agrees with us at the ICA that it is an incredibly talented, influential group of artists, both in Boston and beyond. So many of the artists, Brian included, have these important international ties. So what we have here is not only a story of the Black arts movement in Boston, but how the story of Black art in Boston is a story with national and international ties and influence.
We are talking about Say It Loud, AMARP 1977 to now, which is on view at the ICA through August 2nd. I'm joined by curatorial assistant Megan Claire Considine and Brian McFarlane, who is one of the featured artists. Brian, tell me about your piece, featured very prominently, a very large-scale piece. The title is I Dream of African Souls. I noted that you made it in 1984, and it seems like a very personal piece.
Yes, that piece started in 1984 and was through by about 1985, 86. And of course, it was a time when I was contemplating a lot while being away and living in Boston. I was thinking a lot about my home, about Jamaica, about Africa, about my parents and my grandparents, whom I love a lot. And of course, you know, just being away from family kind of made me I felt a bit lonely at a certain juncture, and being in my studio working. And of course, because I was contemplating a lot about Africa and Jamaica, which is very much like an African state in a way. I started that piece, that large piece, and I've started with one panel, and I realized that at the time I was exploring the notion of space and to create a more dynamic space. So I used several panels and joined them together to create different symbolism, so to speak, of based on the subject of dream. And I did have a lot of dream, I remember, during that period of time. And some of the stuff are actually real that is in the work. It's just a question of, I've composed them so that they might be comprehensible, digestible, and aesthetically pleasing on some level.
I want to ask you about a very real material in the piece, and that's kente cloth.
Yes, the kente cloth was significant in the piece, very, very significant. My godmother gave me a lot of very valuable kente cloth, which basically exposes the tradition of people of Ghana, that section of West Africa. And she gave me because she understood the value of them, what they meant, the fact that in some way the intricate weavings on those cloth tell a story of African peoples, different tribe generations, etc. And of course, understanding those things which I learned from her and also my grandfather, who was Maroon leader in Jamaica. I decided to integrate those in my dream space, that new work I was creating. And I created maybe 20 pieces, I remember, around that time, based on the same idea of I Dream of African Soul.
How did she feel about your use of the kente cloth there?
Well, when I remember she came to a show that I had at the Wendell Street Gallery, and I had smaller works, smaller pieces with the kente cloth pasted as part of the pictorial elements. And she saw it, but she wasn't too sure. She thought I had painted images off the cloth she gave me. But then when she looked closely again, she realized that, they were the stuff that, I thought that she would probably kill me. But then she understood the importance of what I was doing and the fact that maybe the cloth, putting them in that context, would make the work and the story more eternal, more permanent, in terms of showing to in public spaces, etc.
I think that is such a beautiful story, because you thought she would be upset for using it to that end, but quickly understanding the power of art in that regard. Megan, let me ask you about, this is also a period, 1970s, 1980s, where women are also largely excluded from the art world, but not at AMARP, as you document in the exhibition.
Not at AMARP, that's right. There were incredible women artists who have been part of the collective since its inception. The founding cohort had the abstract painter Ellen Banks in it, whose work is actually hung in close proximity to Brian's. Yes. Do you have recollections of Ellen Banks?
Yes, I do. We used to have brief conversations some of the time, and I remember her work being influenced by Scott Joplin, and various composers were classical, be 19th, 20th century composers. I think not Debussy.
Brahms, Beethoven, many composers were very fertile ground for Ellen Banks' abstract composition. And there's an entire section of the exhibition that takes its title from a work by Paul Goodnight called A Room Full of Sisters. And in that gallery, we have work by Gloretta Baines, Barbara Ward. It's a space where we celebrate women artists of AMARP, and also work by AMARP-affiliated artists such as James Reuben Reed that features portraiture of women, such as his amazing portrait of Susan Thompson titled The Mask Maker. AMARP has also been a place of women's leadership. So in the 1990s, Gloretta Baines had a stint as director of the program, and she remains an artist in residence and is really key to some of the kind of archival projects taking place around the collective and its robust history.
Well, I can't underscore how just bowled over I was by this show, the work, how emotionally powerful it is, just technically how fantastic it is. And I think one of the things, unfortunately we won't have time to get into it, but I loved learning about the intergenerational collaboration. We talk a lot about John Wilson, especially in this town, and Alan Rohan Crite, he was part of that. And Brian, I know younger people like you had the chance to work with them. People should beeline there. And on top of the Derek Adams show opening today, it's a twofer, an amazing twofer at the ICA right now. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jared. Very much. Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
Say it out loud. AMARP 1977 to now is on view at the ICA through August 2nd. Curatorial assistant Megan Claire Considine helped bring the exhibition to fruition. Brian McFarlane is one of the featured artists. ICA curator Jeffrey DeBlois organized this exhibition. Sadly, he couldn't be with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library with your sailor's cap, because we'll have some live music. Joining me is Sharks Come Cruisin', a multi-member band who will come armed with their best sea shanties and maritime music. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Mers. Today's engineer is Bill Piacitelli. Brad Lewis produced our YouTube live stream today. To catch up on all of our interviews, including ones like Bob Odenkirk, check out the Culture Show podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.